Right.
Okay, it's 8:30. As County Clerk, I'll call this May 17th meeting of the Zoning Committee to order. We'll begin with roll call, please.
Ron Buckholz.
Present.
Steve Carriennen.
Here.
Did I say that right? Thank you. Tweed Schuman.
Here.
Kay Wilson.
Here.
John Saralski.
Here.
Marshall Savitsky, absent.
Here.
Oh, he's online. Thank you.
And we have a quorum. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record show that this meeting has been noticed to the public and the news media as required by section 19.84. We'll begin the meeting with the elections. I'll open the floor for nominations for the position of chair of the committee. A person receiving majority vote of members entitled to a seat shall be declared elected. This vote shall take place by voice vote. If no majority is reached, balloting shall continue, including all nominees, until a majority is reached. Once the candidates have been nominated, they will be afforded the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. So at this time, I'll open the floor for nominations for the position of chair.
I'll make a motion for Ron Buckholz as chair.
Okay, we have a nomination for Ron Buckholz. Is there any other nomination for position of chair? Third and last call for nominations for the position of chair. Hearing none, we'll open the floor for a unanimous vote for Ron Buckholz as chair. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Chair. Put that nameplate back together. And then we'll move on to the position of vice chair following the same format. Are there any nominations for the position of vice chair? Is there any further nominations for the position of vice chair? Third and last call for nominations for the position of chair. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair. You may have the floor, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate the committee's trust in me again to run this committee, and I'll give her my best. And I just want to say, if anybody wishes to speak on an agenda item, we request that you fill out a comment or public hearing form and hand it in up here to me and Jay. So, all right, number D, statement of committee hearing procedure. This full statement of the committee and hearing procedure document, including directions for individuals wishing to speak at a public hearing to be conducted at the zoning committee meeting, are available in the back of the room next to the agenda for today's committee meeting. The statement of committee hearing procedure document is here incorporated into the record of the committee meeting. Any public hearing conducted at today's committee meeting has been published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 of the Wisconsin statutes in Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette as posted. So, all right, number E. I need a motion to approve the April 19th, 2024 minutes.
I make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson and a second by Mr. Schuman to approve the April 19th minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries to approve. Okay, public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on public comment, we will give you 3 minutes and we will cut you off at 3 minutes. So is there anybody who wants to speak on public comment?
Linda Zomer.
State your name, Linda.
Linda Zilmer, resident of the Village of Birchwood and Edgewater property owner. I have 2 agenda but non-hearing matters to mention this morning. The first one would be that when the committee approves the agenda, or goes forward with the agenda, please consider acting on the operation and reclamation plan for the non-metallic mining operation prior to acting on the conditional use permit. The committee generally has not received a lot of new conditional use permits for gravel pits, but whether it's a renewal or a new one, a lot of times the questions come up about operations and reclamation. And being that that is a condition that gets adopted with a conditional use permit, it might be more efficient to talk about that first. The second thing is with regard to the proposed ordinance amendment that a survey will be developed. I think it would be helpful for this committee to approve or to review the survey questions before they go out to the towns. And then last night after your county board meeting, I sent an email with some procedural matters, not all that have to be addressed today. But I do want to reference that the Sawyer County Code of Ordinances is found on MuniCode and not the multiple documents that are linked on the county website. So please begin using that in applications and in providing information. And yeah, I think the rest of the stuff you could read, and if you decide to take it up at a future meeting, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else out there want to speak on public comment? Okay, go on to number 3.
Yeah, seeing no hands online there
Okay.
as well. I also do want to introduce the committee to our legal representation today. Rebecca Roker is out of office, but we have Kylie Owens online for Altolis Law. Hello, Kylie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Kylie.
This is for rezone application. This is a public hearing in the town of Hayward, rezone number 24-007, owner Medical Services, Inc. This is the north one half of the southwest and the north one half of section 15, township 41 north, range 9 west, parcel 010-941-15-1101. It is 389 total acres. It is zoned agricultural 1 and forestry 1. Purpose of the request is to rezone the entire agricultural 1 zone portion of the property, which is approximately 67.6 acres, from agricultural 1 to industrial 1. Purpose of the request is to then have the hospital located in a correct zone district for the current use. This would be a permitted use within the industrial zone district as a emergency service facility. This would also allow Essentia Health to place additional signage on the property, which would not be allowed under the current zone district. As per the staff report, and let me grab some maps up here as well so you can see them. As part of the staff report, again, the purpose of the request is to rezone the entire A1 zone portion of the property, which is approximately 67.6 acres, from agricultural 1 to industrial 1. The shoreline wetland overlay district is not subject to change as part of this request. Again, this request would then have the hospital located in a correct zone district for a permitted use as an emergency service facility, and would also allow Essentia Health to place additional signage at the property entrance under the industrial zone district as opposed to the agricultural zone district. The proposed rezone would result in conforming zone district dimensional requirements. The remaining portion of forestry 1 land is not subject to change as part of this request. In conversations with the applicant's agent and other directors of the hospital, it was once discussed that the hospital property should ultimately be rezoned into a correct and more appropriate zone district. Previous records were not able to determine why this property was originally zoned Ag 1 and why a rezone wasn't done initially. Again, in conversations, it was determined that the hospital has invested a considerable amount of resources into its current location and is planning to continue in updates to its facility. The proposed rezone would not only have the hospital located in an appropriate zone district, but it would also grant that additional signage to be located at the entrance, as the Sawyer County zoning sign requirements are designated per the zone district. With the attached maps included in this packet, this property is located off of Highway 77, approximately a quarter mile north of the city of Hayward city limits. There is no near I-1 zone property, so this would be viewed as spot zoning. However, spot zoning is not necessarily illegal because such zoning is not necessarily inconsistent with the purposes for which the zoning ordinances can be passed. However, rezoning should be consistent with long-range planning and based upon considerations which affect the whole community. Therefore, spot zoning should only be indulged when it is for the public interest and not for the sole benefit of the property owner. The ability for the hospital to be rezoned to industrial one would affect the whole community, as the current zone district format would have a non-conforming use, which could affect additional expansion. As part of the Town of Hayward Comprehensive Plan, they show this area as public institutional, which is PI. PI's primary intent is to designate areas suitable for public use. When rezoning is requested, it should be for the portion of land necessary for the contemplated use. The current surrounding use is light residential and forestry. There are several wetland complexes that exist on the property. The Shoreline Wetland Overlay District is not subject to change as part of this request, and they would still need to abide by all DNR wetland fill and ordinary high water mark setbacks as per the Sawyer County zoning shoreline wetland protection ordinance. By action of the town board, motion was approved. Benjamin Kurzweil, town chair, Gary Inhofe, supervisor, Carol Williams, supervisor, Andrew Whitworth, supervisor, Brenda Detloff, supervisor. Additional comments, please note town approval zoning change for the 67.6 acres, not the entire property listed as part of the legal description. Zoning change would be for that land lying westerly of Smith Creek and Indian School Lake. So again, as what's shown is the 67.6 acres, and it's not the entire 38 or 389 acres. There were the city of Hayward also received notification as that it is close to city boundaries. They had also approved the request. There were 6 additional notification letters sent out to adjacent properties. 0 were returned. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Jay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing on rezone number 24-007.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson, second by Mr. Schulman to go into public hearing on rezone number 24-007. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. We are now on a public hearing on 24-007. Is the applicant here? You want to step forward and talk to the committee, please?
So, so yeah, we were looking,
Please state your name for the record.
Heather Sheehan from Medical Services, Inc. So yeah, in summary, we were working with the county on some signage, requirements and for additional signage on the property. They actually suggested we consider rezoning, because of the, that the zone was not, aligning with the use of the property. And so, rather than assign variance, they suggested that we pursue rezoning to the correct use. And so that's why we're moving in this direction. So I'd entertain any questions that you guys have related to this request.
Mr. Schulman.
Yeah, Ms. Sheehan, so the rezone is mainly for signage. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
initially, that is what we were working with the county on, was signage, and we were looking at a signage variance. And they actually brought up the fact that because we're zoned Ag 1, it really didn't align with the use of the property. And so it was on their radar that it was zoned incorrectly. And so they suggested kind of, let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone, put in the rezone request, and we could get it zoned for the correct use of the property. And then that would allow, us to do what we were looking at with signage. So, they said probably the same amount of work, whether we look at a signage variance rezone, but either way, either one would allow us to look at the signage that we were looking at putting up.
So you included the whole 67 acres all the way over to the lake and shoreland there. Right, you just want to do one big sweep for signage?
So that was just what was recommended.
Oh, sure.
Is that section of property is all zoned Ag 1. where, you know, we're not using it for egg one. It is used for healthcare purposes. So,
But there's a lot of hiking and biking trails within there. Are they gonna continue those?
yes, the trails will continue. There will be no change to that.
Okay,
Yeah, and that is why the 67.6 acres was determined, is just to grab the entire amount of agricultural one. If we try to do an internal rezone of the area just around the hospital, which I have up on the map, I mean, that would require, you know, additional surveying work. And then we potentially run afoul of leaving a chunk of ag that's not compliant per the zone district requirements for dimensional requirements for the ag zone district. So that is where we just took the entire amount of ag there.
Okay. Is Savitsky on there?
Yeah, I'm on here.
Marshall, you got any questions?
Nope.
I got
Okay,
one more, Chairman.
go ahead.
If you don't
Mr.
mind.
Schuman. Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Sheehan, is this property then tax exempt because it's a medical?
It is currently tax exempt, yes.
That doesn't matter if we rezone it or anything, Jay?
No,
I
that,
didn't
I
have a
mean, that would
concern.
be through other state statutes as a medical service facility having a tax exemption. I doubt any type of tax assessment would be looking at the zone district. It'd be looking at the use of that land.
Got it. I got another comment, but I better hold it.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, does anyone out there want to speak in favor of this rezone? Does anyone out there want to speak in opposition of this rezone? Okay. Linda?
Linda Zilmer, resident of Birchwood and Edgewater property owner. And one of the parts of the first email I sent you last evening was about training set up conveniently for new zoning committee members, as well as there are new plan commissioners and new town board members who are also in need of training. A couple matters that are going to come to you today are from the town of Hayward and the town of Round Lake, where they have lost longtime experienced plan commissioners. Town of Hayward just increased from a 3-member board to a 5-member board with 2 new supervisors and a town board chairman recently appointed. And I think the intent was to keep this moving, but I don't think they understood the consequences. So specific to the application, as it was posted and originally applied for, it had to do with signage. There is nothing in the application that shows what size or kind or class or type of sign was being asked for. And while A1 is not the right zoning, A1 offers a wide range of signage availability. The reason I'm in opposition to the industrial zone district is I think it is the incorrect zone district, because my extensive email to you includes exact copies of information from your official zoning ordinance. Number one, I guess it's confusing because Heather is from Medical Services, Inc. Essentia is a clinic, and is Tamarack the hospital. I know the zoning administrator referred to it as hospital. A definition number 50 in your zoning ordinance has a definition of hospital, and it includes a clinic and everything else that goes on at that facility. Hospitals are conditional uses in residential 1 zone district and C1 zone district. Of those 2 districts, the more appropriate zone district recommendation would have been C1, as it is less incompatible than industrial 1. Once something is zoned industrial, especially that acreage, and I don't believe that these split zone parcels are surveyed. I think they just were, back in the day, that was common. That amount of industrial, when you know that there's going to be current development going on for residential, sets up a conflict which is contrary to the intent of zoning. C1 rezone with a conditional use permit for I think it's the first or second conditional use permit under C1 references the public and private services that are listed in R1. That would be more compatible, more likely for future development. And so I really think, according to your own ordinance, hospitals and clinics are defined. They are conditional uses in R1 and C1. I don't think it's an emergency services facility. And so please help the applicant get this rezoned for the future to C1 with a conditional use permit rather than industrial one. Thank you.
Mr. Kurtzwell. State your name, please, and address.
Benjamin Kurtzwell, 16040 W West Lane, and I am currently the chair of the town of Hayward. First of all, I'm not speaking for or against this rezone. I just have some concerns I'd like to share. Jay was right that this did pass at the town of Hayward Planning Commission and the town board meeting. Again, we asked the applicant of why industrial, and their response was that was what the county had advised. As a town, we have a lot of concerns in the future. Again, if we look, I'm not to say the hospital is not going to be here for a long time, but in 20, 30 years, if they decide to vacate, we look at the use of that property would probably be better commercial as opposed to industrial. It just opens up a huge can of worms that there are concerns in the community about. And again, this was approached to the town, I believe, as a Class C3 sign issue. So I understand that the A1 may not be the appropriate zoning, and I have no problem with them wanting to get their signs up, but this seems to zone this huge chunk of land industrial just for a sign seems kind of a very questionable path. And that's a lot of the concerns we have in the town of Hayward. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, anyone else out there want to speak in opposition of this rezone? You got any hands up, Jay?
Nope. Nothing online.
Okay. All right. If we have no more comments, I need a motion to come out of public hearing on rezone number 24-007.
No move.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schuman. Do I have a second? A second by Ms. Wilson to come out of public hearing on rezone number 24-007. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action, the town of Hayward rezone number 24-007, owner Medical Services Inc. Legal description is previously read into record. The request is to rezone 67.6 acres of agricultural 1 to industrial 1 to then have a permitted use as an emergency service facility.
Okay, I want to break up whatever you decide on this rezone. Please state your finding of facts along with your motion, please. John and Steve, your finding of facts will be on a staff report. So, okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, can I have legal counsel jump in on this?
You-
And
Yes.
I want to hear if industrial 1 is the way we should go and not commercial 1 and why. I guess,
Okay.
not questioning it, it's a concern.
Can you give us your legal opinion on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So either option would work. And I know that Jay considered both options and he felt that industrial would be the better use. So I don't know if Jay wants to speak a little bit to that, but either option would be okay.
Right. And the reason why I guess, I initially kind of looked at industrial for this is that it's a permitted use within the industrial zone district as the emergency service facility. Now, even if it was to go to commercial, it would also require a rezone and a conditional use permit. Even rezoning to commercial would still potentially be viewed as an incompatible use. And those same arguments could be made for commercial, that it's an incompatible use. We do have some, very limited mixing commercial within the immediate area. We also do have a small chunk of industrial within that immediate area to the east of Indian School Lake off of Olson Road as part of the Todd Ready Mix plant. So there are some other industrial zone districts in that area. I still thought that, this would be viewed as a spot zoning, but again, spot zoning is not necessarily illegal if it's for a a greater good of the public use, that greater good of the public use being a hospital. An emergency service facility is basically the same as a hospital. I actually had to Google it this morning as to what a emergency service facility is, and that is a facility that takes in emergency care. And there is an emergency room at the Hayward Hospital, so.
Okay.
And an urgent care, and a clinic, and a senior disability resource center, and a nursing home, and there's a bunch of things that are occurring at that facility right now.
Is there residential allowed within an industrial rezone or industrial zone district?
Could you have
Residential.
residential housing in
Yeah.
an industrial zone district? I don't believe so.
Okay,
No, commercial you could, but as per the ordinance, it would state that, that living quarters on the same premises of a business be provided to the occupancy restricted to the property owner, business operator, or their immediate family. So yes, you can have living quarters, or you can have residential in commercial if that residential person is engaged in a commercial operation at that same building, but industrial would not lead to that.
Okay. Kylie, you got any more input you want to give us, Kylie?
No, I think Jay covered it.
Okay, thank you. So committee, I turn it over to you again. How do you want to go with this? And say, state your findings of facts with your motion, please. Anybody? You know, Jay is our zoning administrator. He's our advisor, and I'm in favor of doing what he advised the applicant to do. So that's just my opinion. The rest is up to you guys. Mr. Schuman?
no, and I would agree, Chairman, and I'm hearing legal counsel chime in and not seeing a major problem with this. I do want to support the hospital in the grounds and what they're doing there, and to have the signage allowed in that zone district. I guess one concern I have is I was gonna talk to Ms. Sheehan about payment in lieu of taxation. That's why I didn't bring it up, Chairman, but nothing to do with this rezone. So I guess I'll make a motion then, Mr. Chairman, that we approve this rezone. Number 24-007 with the finding of facts 1 through 14. I guess I'm looking through here for ones. This would preserve wetlands. It would preserve the use of the property. So finding the facts 1 through 14, motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve rezone number 24-007. Do we have a second? I will second that motion. Any more discussion? If not, Kathy, can we do roll call, please?
Yes. Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
John Sarowski.
Yes.
Kay Wilson. No. Tweed Schuman.
Yes.
Marshall Savitsky.
Yes.
Thank you. 4-1.
Okay, motion carries with 1 nay vote. All right, thank you.
Moving on, this is for the conditional use permits. We did hear public comments about, which portion of this conditional use permit we should hear first. And ultimately, both would need to be approved in order for the conditional use permit to be, active. So we have a location and operation of a non-metallic mineral extraction operation. And then we have the reclamation plan, reclamation being what they're going to do after all the gravel is extracted from that area. Generally, we've held the location operation plan first and made it a condition as part of that approval that you also would approve the reclamation plan. Because if you have issues with the reclamation plan and you don't approve it, then you can't meet the conditions of the other approval. So there's a cart horse. I don't think it matters which one is heard first, but I'll leave it up to the committee as to which route you guys want to go. As presented on the agenda, or would you rather hear a reclamation plan first?
Well, I think we just go with what we got on the agenda.
Sounds-
That way we're following the agenda.
Sounds good. This is a public hearing in the town of Radisson, conditional use permit number 24-010, owner Mark and Linda Heath, northwest one quarter of the southeast one quarter of the southwest one quarter and the southeast one quarter, all in section 16, township 38 north, range 7 west. This is parcels 022-738-16-4201 and 022-738-16-4302. It is 46.68 total acres zoned agricultural 1. Permit is desired for the location and operation of a new non-metallic mineral extraction site, including rock crusher, per Sawyer County zoning ordinance 17.4, parent B, parent 6, to be named as the Whiskey Ridge Pit. As part of the staff report, the permit again is desired for location operation of a non-metallic mineral extraction site, including rock crusher. The actual mine site to be limited to approximately 3.5 acres located in the southern portion of parcel 4201. This would be for the potential 5-year approval. The request for CUP 24010 again is for a new non-metallic mineral extraction operation, including rock crusher. The actual mine site, 3.5 acres with 5,000 to 10,000 yards of material being extracted annually. The surrounding area is additional forest land, land zoned agricultural with additional light residential nearby. The nearest resident would be approximately 1,100 feet away. As per conditions of the approval of the reclamation plan, financial assurance would be required in the amount of $1,500 per acre. The applicant must provide payment of assurance prior to any excavation. The applicant has indicated they will be submitting financial assurance for the amount of $3,000 for the 2 acres that they're looking at doing initially for prior to any extraction. The specified hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Crushing hours are to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, no holidays. 2 crushing events per year, not to exceed 5 days per event. As part of the list of possible conditions, I have that we would need to obtain approval or conditional approval of the reclamation plan, which will be heard next, that the hours of operation as specified in their plan of operation be maintained, which is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. That crushing hours to be 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, no holidays, 2 crushing events per year, not to exceed 5 days per year, or 5 days per event, excuse me. That a fire number or site address is required for the property, maintain compliance with the Department of Natural Resources, Chapter 30, and comply with all other state, federal, local regulations, including approval of the reclamation plan. As part of action of the town board, motion was approved. Phil Quaid, Chair, Robert Villiard, Supervisor, Ron Kinsley, Supervisor. No additional comments. Signed, Cheryl Gerber, Town Clerk. There were 6 additional notification letters sent out to adjacent properties. 0 were returned. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Jay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing on CUP number 24-010.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schuman
I second that motion.
and a second by Mr. Saralski to go into public hearing on CUP number 24-010. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We are now in public hearing. Mr. Heath or Mrs. Heath, which one of you gets to do the pleasure? Well, Mark, he's not bashful. State your name and address, please.
Mark Heath, address 10072 West Radisson, Wisconsin. Want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to be here. Also the zoning administrator for working with me and giving me the opportunity to hopefully advance into my gravel pit, which I used to own 27 years ago. Now I bought 200 acres behind it. So I'm hoping that between the county, the township and the state, they don't have to use up all of our fuel to travel so far for gravel anymore. I have no questions. If you have questions of me, I'll try to answer them the best I can.
Go ahead, Mr. Schuman.
Okay, Mr. Heath, have you seen the reclamation plan and agreeable?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's all workable for you and,
Yep. I've studied it and it looks good. I believe that even the old pit that was there goes up there, 7 acres to the north. It's all growing back that didn't have a reclamation, back then, which the county had it at that time. I believe that in the future now, I get the opportunity to work with some of that and bring it back to where it should be. Plus the new advanced pit that we're doing. Hopefully we can, not hopefully, but we will bring it back when we're done. Hoping to put in some food plots and then seed it down and then probably talk to a state forester to come in and tell me what best to plant.
Okay.
so the county did reclamation work in the past. Correct?
So what Mark was talking about there is the existing gravel pit to the south. It predated the NR 135 reclamation ordinance and also the county reclamation ordinance. It's one of those pits that just out there. We're dubbed borrow pits.
40 years ago.
Yeah, it didn't have a whole lot of regulation. It's just kind of naturally recovered. So.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Heath? Marshall, you got any questions?
No, I'm okay.
All right. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Heath.
Just
Thank you.
real quick, Chairman.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Heath, are you agreeable to all these other conditions that zoning's put on you?
Yes,
The
I am.
hours and,
Absolutely. I'm 100% for it.
all right.
The people that live next to the pit, they're like second generation. They had some concerns. They talked with me. The concerns are you gonna be like the county did where they left their crusher in there and they crushed all summer long when they needed 100 yards? And it's absolutely not. We have rules and regulations now that they didn't have 30, 40 years ago. We have to abide by them and they will.
Okay.
You bet.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Okay, does anyone out there want to speak in favor of this CUP? Ms. Zilmer?
Linda Zilmer, resident of Birchwood, Edgewater, property taxpayer, and I hope you don't penalize the applicant because I'm speaking in favor of it. Because,
Let's just say you
you're taking
shocked
this-
us.
I know. Because you are taking up the conditional use permit prior to the reclamation plan, I have two questions than comments. Number one is, in the zoning administrator reading, the information about this application, he was talking about 3.5 acres. Is the conditional use permit for the full 46.68 or is it the 3.5? And the second question that I hope you ask about at this point in your agenda then would also be that the information in the reclamation plan says that groundwater is at 20 feet. And so I didn't see anything in the reclamation plan that would address that if they got down into the groundwater level, what their provisions would be. So please discuss that. Thank you.
Okay. It is the 46.86.
Yeah, you want me to field those questions? Yeah, so the conditional use permit would be for the entire property. As part of the 5-year approval that you're granting at this point, it's for the, designated mine site right now of the 3.46 or 3.5 acres. So in 5 years, when they come back for renewal, if they're wanting to expand further than the 3.5 acres, they'll need to ask for it at that point. Looking at the topography of this property, that gravel is gonna be really contained in that ridge that I have up here on the map, which is roughly around that 3.5 acres. There might be a little bit more they could chew into, but I don't see this mine site becoming any larger than really 5 acres at any point. I just don't think you're gonna find gravel. And that goes into the question of the groundwater as well. You know, where we're looking and seeing groundwater, and those groundwater tables, they're determined from what's known as the Web Soil Survey, which is a USDA website, where you kind of do an area of interest, and it kind of tells you where you're going to find your depth to groundwater in those types of soils. When you look at the map, though, you do have that stream and that wetland complex kind of to the east side of that 40 acres, and that is generally where you're going to see groundwater. When you're starting to see surface water elevation, that's generally where you're going to see groundwater from a higher knob going down. They're going to be flat across that. That groundwater is around a 1250 contour line. Where they're looking at excavating is around 1290, and then taking that floor down 25 feet. So they're still going to be in upwards of 20 feet above the groundwater table. Those soils are going to be a broad overview of that entire area. So it'll be 20 feet to groundwater at 1270 contour, but that ridge that they're excavating on, they got 45 feet to the groundwater table.
How close are they to the wetland that's delineated here?
Scaling this out, 300 plus feet. I'm just looking, here's that ridge. I have it up on the screen if you can see it on the monitors. This is the ridge that they're looking at excavating out. This is where we're starting to see that small creek and wetland complex. Using this scale, that is 400 feet. We're upwards of 300 feet still from the wetlands.
Go to the wetland map. The surface water viewer map.
Yep, so here's this ridge here, they're looking at
That one.
excavating. I don't necessarily see that this finger of wetland would come all the way up there. I could look at some other maps. This is the area of concern here. That's where all the topography runs down this way. Cause they're gonna end up kind of back cutting this ridge where, water's not gonna move this way because it's going to be a high, bank wall here, and basically cutting this bank down this way. So water movement's still gonna wanna run to the north, and specifically to the northwest. So that is where they'd, look at doing with their chapter 30 permitting of, having more of that collection area here so that it doesn't continue to run off. Although that's, again, 300 feet of distance before it even gets to a wetland.
And that's woods
Right
in
now,
that area?
yep, right now it is.
Yeah, Jay, does the chapter 30 regulations address groundwater? The DNR chapter 30?
Not necessarily. I mean, DNR is going to have some additional oversight with this. Chapter 30 is generally, regulating water runoff. Stormwater management is what chapter 30 is.
Correct, yes. They're also gonna be looking to see characteristics of the site to if it is deemed internally drained. And yeah, if there's potential for runoff, like Jay said, to navigable water or intermittent stream, I guess. I don't know exactly how this one's classified. And then if you were building a pond within X amount of feet of a navigable water, the chapter 30 would also cover that. Which I don't believe is part of any plan, so.
Okay, does anyone else out there want to speak in favor of this CUP? Anyone out there want to speak in opposition of the CUP? Okay, if none, I need a motion to come out of public hearing on CUP number 24-010.
Motion, Mr. Chairman, come out.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schuman. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Wilson to come out of public hearing on CUP number 24-010. All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed? Motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action, Town of Radisson, conditional use permit number 24-010, owner Mark and Linda Heath. Legal description is previously read into record. This request is for the location, operation of non-metallic mineral site, including rock crusher, to be named the Whiskey Ridge Pit.
Okay, committee, I just want to make one comment before. I believe with this pit becoming part of Radisson area, it will benefit a lot of the townships for getting gravel, because we're in need of gravel. So I believe it would be a good thing to have this pit there. So, committee, what is your desire here?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve CUP number 24-010 with the conditions listed in Jay's staff report 1 through 6 and the findings of facts 1 through 14. My motion is to approve the CUP.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the floor to approve CUP number 24-010. Do I have a second? Mr. Sarowski.
Second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion?
I'd like to include in the conditions that we approve that with the condition that we also approve the operation and maintenance plan, because in that plan, they list that they won't go any deeper than 25 feet and will stay away from the water.
You want to put that in your?
I mean, that's kind of part of it already. It's-
Well,
I mean, the
I
conditional use
saw-
permit is for their plan of operation. And if they're outside of their plan of operation, they're in violation of their conditional use permit. It's not a specialized condition that you would add, because the cup is for the location and operation plan.
Okay, as long as that's
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
All right.
Yep, that was.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the CUP number 24-010. Any more discussion? Not, can we have a roll call, Kathy, please?
John Sarowski.
Yes.
Kay Wilson.
Yes.
Tweed Schuman.
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Marshall Savitsky. Is he still?
Marshall? Are you there?
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
What do you
Yes.
vote? Yes?
Yes, in favor, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor.
All right.
All right, this is the conditional use permit application for the reclamation plan 24-010, applicant Mark and Linda Heath. Legal description is the same as the plan and operation. Again, this permit is desired for the Sawyer County NR 135 reclamation issuance for the location operation of a non-metallic mineral open pit limited to 5 acres of the actual mine site. Again, the reclamation plan is going to include, a little bit more area than the actual mine site. Again, if the applicant was to want to extract outside of the 3.5 acres before the 5-year renewal would come up, he would have to come back in for an early renewal. The reclamation plan, though, is still covering 5 acres. So after his 5-year renewal, if he said, yeah, I'd like to, go into another acre and a half, the reclamation plan is already accounting for that. So he doesn't have to update the reclamation plan at that point. So again, the reclamation plan is including a little bit more land area at that point. Again, the applicant is requesting the new non-metallic mineral extraction operation. The previous public hearing was for the location operation was approved, and that is for the 3.46 acres of disturbance. The reclamation plan would now cover the entire lot, or at least the 5 acres as identified per his plan. The main area of gravel, again, would be located on the higher elevations as shown on the topography maps that are attached. Extraction of the gravel on the lower elevations would require additional testing as to the groundwater depths. The anticipated elevation is approximately, of the groundwater is anticipated at 1250. I think it's even probably lower than that, to be honest, but per the plan, the pit depth is not to exceed 25 feet as to stay above the groundwater elevation. 5,000 to 10,000 cubic yards of gravel are to be extracted annually from the site per the NR 135 requirements before approval can be granted for the conditional use. The regulatory authority, being the county, needs to approve the applicant's reclamation plan, which is attached. The Sawyer County Zoning and Conservation Department has reviewed the reclamation summary and concludes the plan is consistent with the standards specified in NR 135 for the post-mining activities described as passive wildlife use with food plots. The zoning committee, being the regulatory authority, now may approve, conditionally approve, or deny the reclamation plan. If the regulatory authority approves the reclamation plan subject to the general compliances of NR 135, the approval may not include conditions that are not related to the reclamation plan. Other conditions may be added during the public hearing process for the location and operation, which we had heard. One required condition of approval of the reclamation plan shall be that the new mine owner obtain financial assurance. If the regulatory authority denies the reclamation plan, they need to have findings of facts of one of the following: that the applicant, after being given an opportunity to make corrections, failed to provide adequate permit application, reclamation plan, financial assurance, or other substantial or submittal requirement of NR 135, that the proposed mine site cannot be reclaimed in accordance to NR 135, or that the applicant or their agent during the course of non-metallic mining in Wisconsin within 10 years of the permit application or modification request being considered, shown a pattern of serious violations of this chapter or federal or state or local environmental laws. Denial shall be in writing as per the requirements of NR 135.30. Again, the town would have, not specifically been approving the reclamation plan. They'd be approving the entire pit as a whole. So that is my staff report for the reclamation plan.
Okay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing on reclamation plan CUP number 24-010, please. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Sarowski.
I will second that.
And a second by Mr. Schuman to go into public hearing on reclamation plan CUP number 24-010. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We are now in public hearing on 24-010. Mark, you want to speak again or no? Okay. Mr. Savitsky, you have any questions on this?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Anyone out there want to speak in favor of this reclamation CUP? Anyone out there want to speak in opposition of this CUP? Okay, if not, need a motion to come out of public hearing on reclamation plan CUP number 24-010. Got a motion by Ms. Wilson. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second that.
And we have a second by Mr. Sarowski to come out of public hearing on CUP number 24-010. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action, Town of Radisson. This is for the reclamation plan associated with conditional use permit number 24-010, owner Mark and Linda Heath. Legal description is previously read into record.
Okay. And when we do this, either approve or deny, make sure you add everything in there that needs to go in your motions for this. So committee, I'm turning it over to you.
This doesn't necessarily have findings of facts when you approve the reclamation plan, so you wouldn't need to include the findings of facts with this. You would just need to include the conditions as specified in the reclamation plan.
All right. All right, Mr. Schuman.
All right, thank you, Jay, for that clarification. All right, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the CUP Reclamation Plan number 24-010 with the conditions stated in the reclamation plan. That sound good, Jay?
Yep. Okay.
All right, motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And when we have a second by Ms. Wilson to approve the reclamation CUP number 24-010. Any more discussion? If not, let's do roll call, Kathy, please.
Kay Wilson,
Yes.
Tweet Schuman.
Yes.
John Sarowski,
Yes.
Marshall Savitsky,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
All in favor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you want to move right on along here still? I think we can get one of these done here. This is a public hearing for Aspen Grove as preliminary plat review. This is a preliminary county subdivision plat for 7-lot proposal. Owner Gord Capital LLC. It's located in the town of Hayward. This requires zoning committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection. As part of the staff report, this again, town of Hayward, southwest 1/4, the northeast 1/4, section 20, township 41 north, range 9 west, parcel 010941201301301. It is 40 total acres zoned to agricultural 1. Again, this is a public hearing for the preliminary plat review for a 7-lot county subdivision plat. The subdivider shall submit to the county zoning administration, the county surveyor, and the town board for those agents authorities having the ability to object the plat under the provisions of chapter 236. The preliminary plat shall show clearly the existing conditions of the proposed subdivision, which it has. I don't know if you want me to go through all the requirements of 236 here, but ultimately we have conditionally, the zoning administrator, myself, have conditionally approved the preliminary plat. The plat has been deemed necessary to comply with the provisions of the public notification, as for the application for a conditional use permit with applicable fees. So we are seeing quite a few more subdivision plats, and we had a conversation with zoning committee a couple years ago. In our zoning ordinance, it states that if zoning committee finds that a plat merits enough to constitute a public hearing, that would be heard similarly to a conditional use permit. 2 years ago, this committee voted that we want to see all plats come through Sawyer County Zoning Committee. So what that ultimately means is that when someone submits for a plat, they have to submit the fees similarly to a conditional use permit, and we hear it as a public hearing process, but it's not the same as an actual conditional use permit as defined by the statutes. But it's processed the same way, where we have a public hearing process for the plats. So that's what that's addressing there.
Okay.
Again, the subdivider shall comply with the section 6 for all roads before the final plat is approved. Again, these that we have here are all for preliminary plat reviews. And if you approve the preliminary plats, that would then move forward to a final plat review, still to be potentially heard next month. If the subdivider wants to proceed at that point. Where zoning committee finds that additional information is relative to a problem or concern proposed by the proposed subdivision, the zoning committee shall have the authority to request such information from the subdivider. Such additional information may include, but is not limited to, soil borings conducted by a certified soil tester, a stormwater management plan under the provisions of NR 216, achieving the erosion control performance standards of NR 151, or regional flood elevation. Again, the subdivider prior to the lot development will need to submit for a stormwater management plan to the DNR. Anytime you have over 1 acre of earth disturbance, now that earth disturbance being for clearing of trees, clearing of roads, clearing of the lots itself, as the whole property is contained right now, not the individual parceled lots, but as the whole property is now. Once you go over 1 acre of earth disturbance, you are required a stormwater management plan from the DNR. So all of these prelim plats that we are looking at will need, prior to pushing in their roads and doing new lot excavation, will need to obtain those necessary permits from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. You can certainly tie that on to a condition, as part of your approval process. There again is kind of the cart and horse thing, where if you say, we're gonna conditionally approve this prelim plat, or we're gonna reject this prelim plat until you get stormwater management. It's like, okay, well, you're having that applicant go out, contact with an engineer company, do a stormwater management plan, get the stormwater management plan approval from the DNR to come back here and then to tell them no. So if you do something of that nature, you almost want to conditionally approve the plat with them getting their DNR stormwater management. Otherwise, if you're holding it just to a stormwater management, try to find another option as to why you don't want to proceed with the plat. That's my 2 cents on it, but ultimately you as the committee have the authority to do what you want there. I have deemed that this application is complete and we have the map as the prelim plat up. Be it that these lots are to remain agriculturally zoned. I did have some initial conversations with the previous plan commission chair for the town of Hayward. I'm not sure where that conversation has gone now because that individual has retired from that position. But be it that these lots are zoned agricultural, it does require a town approval process to build a residential structure on an agricultural lot where that individual is not actively engaged in an agricultural operation or agricultural production. It is not intended that these are going to be for agricultural production. The lots right now are fully wooded. I mean, it would need quite a bit to get it to any type of agricultural use. If the town is approving the plat, I had suggested that, if you're approving the plat as the intention of residential building, you may want to also include in the town board's motions that you would also grant residential development on these. Are there potentials to, rezone this 40 acres to a different zone district? Yes. But when you rezone them to a different zone district, then you're going to have less than 5 acre lots because the 7 lots could all of a sudden turn into 30 lots for RR1 development. So I kind of like the idea that they stayed agricultural where we'd have a minimum 5 acre lots. And a lot of these are certainly over that amount. But again, it would still require town approval once an application was received for a land use permit to build it, just a residential building. Instead of having applicants come back to the town, it might be something, advantageous to the town to, grant approvals for residential builds on these during the final plat approval process. That's what I have. I know the surveyor is here. I'm not sure if the owner is here or not, but if there are any additional questions on the actual plat, I would then turn it over to him, or you can certainly ask me and I can try to answer those.
I got one question for Jay, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Jay, is there any shoreline or wetlands within this 40 acres?
There are not.
Not?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I need a motion to go into public hearing on Aspen Grove preliminary county subdivision plat for 7 lot proposal.
Motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman. Do I have a second? We have a second by Mr. Sorolski to go into public hearing on Aspen Grove. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. We are now in public hearing. Mr. Susan, you want to say anything concerning this? Please state your name and address.
Jesse Susan, 13731 W Schustrom Circle. I can answer any questions, I guess, so.
I guess I have one question. Did the town want to have this as a public road or a private road?
At the last meeting, we discussed it and it was gonna be a private road.
Okay.
Okay. All right, anybody have any questions for Mr. Susan? Go ahead, Mr. Schuman.
Does this front a town road,
It does.
Jesse? Does it?
Yes, it does. On the west side, it's Gord Road.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Savitsky, you got any questions? Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
Are these lots 5 acres or more? I can't read this.
Yeah, the scan didn't come through great, but yes, they are larger than 5 and in fact, quite a bit larger than 5 for most of them. Do you have the large map with you?
I do. Yes, I do. Would you like to see it or?
It may help. So lot 1 is 5.01, lot 2 is 5.06, lot 3 is 6.95, lot 4
No, but there's
is
lot one.
5.50, lot 5 is 7.05, lot 6, 5.01, lot 7, 5.01. So they are all larger than 5 acres.
Okay. All right. Any more questions?
I just said.
No questions, wait, okay. All right, thank you, Jesse. Does anyone out there want to speak in favor of this? Aspen Grove?
You have a hand up. Yep.
Go ahead, Lynn Silmer.
Linda Zilmer, resident of Birchwood, Edgewater property owner, and again, my qualifying statement, please don't penalize the applicant. When Jay was explaining the town approval process for constructing a dwelling on a agricultural parcel, that is a county ordinance. The county ordinance, and I don't think that Jay would want to circumvent his own ordinance. The county zoning ordinance includes conditional uses and special uses. In the past, the zoning committee heard not only conditional uses, but they acted on special uses after approval by the town. During Dale Olson's administration of zoning, he convinced the zoning committee to no longer have those special use permits come before the committee. And it was argued at the time that under state case law, a conditional use and a special use are essentially the same thing, but nobody's ever challenged the county. So the whole purpose was to try and preserve and not fragment agricultural lands or forestry lands. So it's the county's own ordinance that spells out that before issuing a land use permit for a dwelling on ag land, the town must go through an approval process, similar to what the zoning administrator was suggesting being done for sheds. So please don't circumvent your own zoning ordinance. I appreciate the development and the larger lot sizes, but I don't think you can circumvent your ordinance by removing the requirement to get a special use permit. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else out there want to speak in favor? Anyone out there want to speak in opposition? Okay. So you need an approval, right?
It would be as an approval, conditional, acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection of the preliminary plat. If the committee grants acceptance, we will then re-talk with the subdivider to see as to when they want to move this forward as the final plat approval. In conversations with them, I think we would see this on next month's agenda for final plat approval. Speaking on the special use application, yeah, that was before my time as per the zoning ordinances. Land uses listed as permitted by special use application in the A1 or F1 zone districts are allowed only after review, consideration, and approval of the town board and the zoning administrator. This category recognizes that land uses vary in their degree or impact on both community and resources. Special uses are considered less critical than conditional uses, but of such importance that they shall be subject to review by the town board and the zoning administrator. The only, thing that I was saying is that if the town's already reviewing this plat as approval of 7 lots in agricultural zone district, knowing that they are to be future residential build sites, why not allow basically a statement or, condition of the plat approval that they would be allowed to build a residential site? You'd hate that the plat would be approved and then 4 years from now, when an applicant comes to build, the town denies them to build in an agricultural zone district. That doesn't seem right to me. But the town would have the ability to do what they want, so. Okay. Because as for our zoning administrator review, I would approve the land use permits for residential builds. It still would require the town board of approval though.
Okay. All right.
On
Mr.
ag
Schuman.
land, right? Do we need to come out of the public hearing then, Mr. Chairman?
No, because it's,
Yeah, you probably should, I guess.
but we don't have no discussion for it. All right, but we can do that. All right, I need a motion to come out of public hearing on Aspen Grove county subdivision plat for 7-lot proposal.
Sure, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I'll second it.
we have a motion, a second to come out of public hearing on Aspen Grove.
All in favor?
I'm thinking, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
And now this would require either committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection.
Okay, that's why I thought we could do that public
Yeah.
hearing because it wasn't. Oh, that's okay.
Jay, what are the conditions you might be recommending on this? Are there any?
I would have no conditions on this. As far as the plat looks right now. I mean, the plat has the acreage requirements. It meets zone dimensional requirements. As part of any type of excavation in excess of 1 acre, it's going to require stormwater management. These are not steep slopes on this property. It would be really suited for conventional sewer systems. I would have no other conditions to list.
And this preliminary plat has been approved by the town?
Yes, I probably didn't read that into record. Motion was approved. Benjamin Kurtzweil, Andrew Whitwer, Carol Williams, Supervisor, Gary Enoff, Supervisor Brenda Detlef, Supervisor, all approved for the preliminary plat review with no conditions, signed Brenham, Town Clerk. There were 10 additional notification letters sent out to adjacent property owners, 0 were returned.
All right, Mr. Schuman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve zoning committee acceptance of this preliminary plat review as we've discussed.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the acceptance. I will second that motion. Any more discussion?
I'd like to add that it be a residential build, as Jay suggested.
I'd be happy to add that.
Okay, all right, got that, Kathy? All right, thank you. Yes. All right, so any more discussion? Okay, Kathy, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Tweet Schuman,
Yes.
Marshall Savitsky,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
John Saralski,
Yes.
Kay Wilson.
Yeah.
All in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I request a 5-minute recess?
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break. Yep, okay. I call this zoning committee meeting back to order, please.
All right, this is a public hearing for the Preserve Phase 1, the preliminary county subdivision plat for a 22 lot proposal, including 3 outlots. The owner is the Preserve at MBF LLC, care of Jeremy Hill. This is located in the town of Hayward. This requires either zoning committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection. As part of my staff report, again, this is the town of Hayward. Legal descriptions are included on the actual preliminary plat map, and as well as the property list and information pages included with the staff report. Again, this public hearing is for the preliminary plat review. As part of the county subdivision plat request, the applicant is seeking to submit for a plat consisting of 22 lots, including 3 additional outlots. Again, this request is only for phase 1. As listed in the staff report, we do have kind of the procedures of the preliminary plat review. The zoning administrator, myself, have conditionally approved the preliminary plat, and the plats have been deemed necessary to comply with the provisions for the public notification as an application for conditional use with the applicable fees. as part of the preliminary plat discussion and the prelim public hearing meeting, we would want to address the road consideration. Now, the road consideration has been something that has been brought up between both the town of Hayward and the town of Round Lake. And just to give the committee some kind of background of this, the applicant first proposed a larger plat to the zoning department. I believe it was 106 lot plat proposal. That was then kind of altered to the phase plan that you see in front of you. So the applicant is wanting to kind of build these in specific phases, and there would be no conditions that you would want to list that approval of phase one would guarantee an approval of phase four. There are certain requirements that when a plat is approved, that prior to selling a specific amount of lots, that the roads would need to be constructed and built to to town road specs. The considerations as to whether or not these would be public roads or they'd be private roads would be something specifically you'd want to leave up to each individual township to see whether they wanted to accept them as public roads or not. And that's something that you can certainly ask of the applicant or even to the towns when I get to their kind of approvals listed in the staff reports here. We have deemed that this application is complete. The subdivider prior to lot development will need to submit and be approved a stormwater management plan. Again, this is just for phase one, which is the 22 lots, including 3 outlots as part of the town board for the town of Hayward. Again, phase one is just included in the town of Hayward. Phases 2 and 3 are actually in the town of Round Lake, which is great when we have split towns as part of this request. So it's always fun to try to juggle that. So the town of Hayward did approve Benjamin Kurtzmile, chair, Andrew Whitworth, supervisor, Carol Williams, supervisor, Gary Inhofe voted no. Brenda Detloff voted yes. So 4-1 for approval. Motion to accept phase one of preliminary plat with exception of taking road over as a town road. That was signed Bryn Hand, town clerk. There were 15 additional notification letters sent out as part of all phases in this. Again, this larger chunk, and I'll bring up some of the maps though. The current owner or the applicant here owns a lot of the surrounding land. So when we pull a 300-foot radius from where the 3 phases are being proposed, and even to the extent more so of phase one, there's only 15 property owners within 300 feet that are sent those additional notification letters. Again, 0 of those were returned. So with that, I guess I'd like to kind of show you some of the aerial maps as well as the phase one prelim plat. And then we'll see if we have any additional questions. Again, this didn't show up great, but you can see as part of their phase proposal, this is as phase one. This yellow highlighted, as you can see, is phase two. The orange highlighted is phase three. They do have listed as a phase 4, 5, and 6. But again, at this point, we're only looking at the 3-phase proposal. And specifically for this preliminary public hearing, you're looking at phase 1 of that request. Those that are not familiar, this is located off of Highway 77. It kind of centralizes around the existing Mosquito Brook flowage. Mosquito Brook flowage was a river system that had a dam impoundment. That dam had actually broken away. Maybe you can remind me, is that 4 years ago now? 24 or 2020, that dam had actually let go and that we actually did get some flooding off of Porky's Road as before it dumps into the Namakagon River. The Beavers have done a pretty decent job of rebuilding their own dam structure there. So there is, a couple feet of water that is maintained throughout the system. It's certainly not to the same elevations as when the actual man-made dam structure is there. But at this time, there's no plans to rebuild the dam. There's no plans, that those beavers are, that someone may, pull the beaver dam. We would still see this as a navigable body of water. It's something that has a bed and bank So you can see here as kind of, this proposal, there is an ordinary high water mark that's still associated. Even though water might not be up to those boundaries, we would still have that as a defined bed and bank and still treat that as a 75-foot offset for building aspects. And there we have kind of as the topography map of the phase one proposal, which is again, the one that you're looking at for this specific public hearing process. The outlots are listed on here. The majority of the outlots that are listed on all of these phases are actually just as the roads themselves, that the owners themselves would have a joint interest in the roads. That way you could, set up a maintenance agreement for plowing and maintaining of the roads. As we had heard from the town of Hayward, though, they are looking at wanting these as public roads. So that will probably end up changing with a final plat approach. And maybe you can speak to the committee when we get to that point. So the only thing I have from the town of Hayward, motion to accept phase one, exception of taking road over as town road. Exception of taking over. So I would have the town of Hayward chairman kind of speak to that when we open the public hearing process, because that is something that we would specifically focus with the subdivider as well as the town as to what they want to do with the road situation.
Okay,
And that was all.
all right. I need a motion to go into public hearing on the preserve phase one, please.
So moved, Chairman.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman. Do I have a second? We have a second by Ms. Wilson to go into public hearing on the preserve phase one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. We are now in public hearing. So I guess, Ben, you want to come up and then and talk about the town road there then?
Benjamin Kurzweil, 16040 W West Lane, again, as the chair of the town of Hayward. And again, I'm new at being a chair, so I tend to probably err on the side of caution and go a little slower. So this whole thing has been started before my time. It did get approved at the planning commission on Wednesday, May 8th, and then it came before the board on the 14th. So in conversations with my road crew too, I mean, right now we have the town of Hayward apparently changed their ordinance back in 2016, so they do take over gravel roads as town roads. So I don't know about other townships in the county, it seems it's a mix, but some towns only take over roads that are up to town specs and paved. Hayward seems at this point to be able to take over gravel roads. However, we also have a private road ordinance that states a private road can be no longer than a quarter of a mile and no more than 4 driveways. That I don't believe has been enforced for the last 20 years because we have private roads that do not meet that requirement. So we have a mess when it comes to our ordinances, okay? So at this point, we have 4 gravel roads or non-paved roads that the town has taken over. One of them has 0 houses on it that we are maintaining. This proposed road in phase one, I believe, according to Mr. Hill, was about 2+ miles of gravel roads. That would have effectively over doubled the amount of gravel roads our town would be maintaining. So the board decided at Tuesday's meeting that at this point in time, we will approve the preliminary plat, but, and again, because there's some question if we approve the preliminary plat as is, and the road is plotted out to be public, does that mean the town automatically accepts it as a town road? I don't know. So we made the exception that we would accept the plat, but not take on that road at this time. So again, it's at this point, we don't want to take it on, not to say something might not happen in the future. Any questions?
So it's a public road, not to be maintained or plowed by the town.
It's a private road.
It's a private road.
We do not want to take it on as a public road.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand that. I do. Oh. Go ahead.
But what is that rule about a quarter of a mile and 4 hoses.
Yeah, and that was brought up to me before. I didn't bring my subdivision ordinance, but under the provisions of the county subdivision ordinance, let me see if I can, do you have subdivision in there? I probably didn't do that. It's up to, the road consideration is really up to the municipality. The governing municipality, be it the town in those aspects. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. But ultimately, if we wanna, while I look for it, if you wanna gain an additional information from the applicant, this will take me a little bit.
Let me just say this too, that in the previous year that I've been attending planning commission meetings in the town of Hayward, there seems to be some confusion over plats made, and it seems to be that there's some confusion if a developer says, hey, the town, take it over as public road, it seems to me that people in the planning commission think, okay, well, it has to be a town road then. And from my understanding is, again, it's up to the municipality whether to accept that road as a public road or a private road. And in this case, we have made the decision at this time that it to remain a private road. So any other questions for me?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Mr. Hill, you want to speak? Your name and address too for the record, please.
Hi, Jeremy Hill, 16271 West Miller Road, town of Lenred. Thanks for hearing this issue today, board. As town of Hayward Chair mentioned, at the Tuesday meeting, they approved the prelim plat, but did not want to take over the roads out of concern that there was no houses built and it'd be a large, maintenance bill for the town. It sounds more complicated than it is probably because back in January, we submitted a preliminary plat to county zoning for the whole project based on private roads. That was actually our intent initially. And that plat had the roads platted as private roads, meaning the property line went down the middle of the road and there's a 33-foot easement on both sides where the lots included that road acreage, basically. Both towns initially reacted and said they did not want to have that much private road and that they wanted us to make them public roads. So we went back, redrew our plats, drew the roads as 66-foot deeded, pieces of land not included in the lot acreage, and resubmitted this in phases. And that's what's in front of you today. So we're okay with the town of Hayward saying they don't want to take these over right now. At the meeting, they basically said, if there's more houses built on this eventually and, the tax base supports maintaining these as town roads, they're open to doing so. Our plat is drawn right now with the road as platted 66-foot outlot, which is how it has to be on the prelim plat. And our surveyor, Todd Gould, is present online as well right now if there's questions of him. But basically, I think this just came up Tuesday and we're still trying to figure it out. But I think the way we're going to proceed is that we're going to assume it's a private road for right now. We'll maintain it. So my company, Hill Construction, is basically what's behind this project. And we're looking to build 10 homes a year for the next 10 years in here. It's going to be a 10-year project for us. We own 3 plow trucks, 3 skid steers, a mini excavator, whatnot. We have all the equipment to maintain these roads ourselves. This first phase that you're looking at right now has about 1 mile of town road, town of Hayward, or a little more. And in the future, there may be another mile of town of Hayward road. But basically, I think we're going to approach this. Initially, we wanted private roads anyway. So I think we're going to approach this as, we're going to say it's a private road. We're going to maintain it for now. And if there's enough houses built in there where the town of Hayward's interested in taking over as a private road or as a town road, and if our HOA, would like to do that, then the lots are all set up accordingly where the roadway can just be deeded to the town. There'll be no additional surveying needed. So it should work out pretty smooth that way.
So these houses that you plan on build, are they going to be just like private homes or are they going to be rental units or anything like that?
Yeah, so the big picture of this is, so eventually there's going to be 110 lots here. Planning to do just regular residential homes. We have covenants laid out right now that don't prohibit rentals per se, but we're going to have noise ordinances, speed ordinances for ATVs and things on the road. So our intent, so this property borders the Berkey Trail. So we bought the old Thorpe property. It's 940 acres. It surrounds the Mosquito Brook flowage and borders the Berkey Trail for about 700 feet on the north side. There's an existing trail that goes around the flowage that Mr. Thorpe had maintained. And there's a trail network through this property that we're using for part of our roads. And, but the important thing is there's a really nice trail that goes around the old Mosquito Brook flowage right now that basically goes all the way around, connects the DNR property on the west of us. And, our intent is to have this be a recreational trail, like a ski bike hike neighborhood, similar to what Fred Shear's done and Hatchery's done. So, with the exception of, we're doing 5-acre lots. It's zone forest. It was zone forestry. We're not planning to rezone. With the Mosquito Brook flowage, likely the DNR is gonna pull the dam out of that. And it's likely gonna return to just a wetland with a brook trout stream running up the middle of it. But whether whether that happens or not, we're ordering we're using the original lake's ordinary high water mark as the border of the lots themselves. And our plan is to conserve everything inside of that, everything inside of the original ordinary high water mark of the lake as either going to be some sort of a conservancy or the HOA will own it as a conservancy or some sort of thing. But basically, we're not planning to do any development of that. So we're gonna have it's gonna be a nice neighborhood, 5-acre lots, private trail network, connecting to the Berkey Trail, and we're Round Lakes across the road. We've got covenants laid out that are gonna keep this as a nice, quiet residential neighborhood.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Hill? Mr. Savitsky, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. Does anyone out there want to speak in favor of this?
Before we get to that, I do have
Oh, okay,
this,
go ahead.
I do have the subdivision ordinance pulled up.
Okay.
And I did have conversations with both the town of Hayward and the town of Round Lake concerning this, and these are the provisions of the Sawyer County subdivision ordinance. So 6.15 of the Sawyer County subdivision ordinance talks about private road easements and further goes on to state as sub C that private roads servicing a county and state subdivision are not allowed except as provided in 6.1.3. When we go back up to 6.1.3, it then says all roads in a county or state subdivision plat shall be public roads unless the governing municipality chooses not to accept the roads. The governing municipality be it the town, and if the town does not want to have these as public roads, it would have to default to private roads. So there's a little bit of,
Yeah.
I don't want to say loophole, but it really is up to the town on what they want to have as their roads, whether they be public or whether they be private.
Okay.
What point in the approval process is that demonstrated by the town in the final plat? That they say that, or?
I mean, you really would want to, get to the crux of that through a preliminary plat, because it does take the subdivider some, and the surveyor some work to prepare the maps that we have. And if you come to a final plat provision and then you change the roads again, or you have, different opinions within the town, well, they have to go back to their CAD system to redraw in those new, be it public roads or be it private roads, whatever you're switching to. So those conversations really should be laid out through this prelim process. Because when it gets to final, I mean, you've already seen it several times. It's probably been at the town several times. You really should have a direction on which way you want to go through the prelim process. Where I would almost recommend that you wouldn't approve a prelim without having that knowledge, because once again, it gets to a final stage, that should be the time where it's signed off by the committees and towns.
Mr. Criswell, you wanted to speak?
Just real quickly, again, this was before my time, and with Mr. Hill, I apologize. I don't know, again, what was said before at the Round Lake meetings or at the Hayward meetings before I got there. And again, things may have been discussed with him before, and I apologize to kind of throw a wrench in it. But I have also reached out to the town of Round Lake on this to try to get some type of intergovernmental cooperation, and so far it has been kind of difficult. So, because again, we have this plat straddling both lines, I've been reaching out to them to try to find out what they did with their roads. And just to clarify, I think what Ms. Wilson was saying is that I believe Town Lake approved the preliminary plat, but did not mention the roads. And I believe the supervisors who were voting had a discussion about the roads, but thought they were tabling that discussion till later. but they approved the preliminary plat. So I think Ms. Wilson's kind of looking at Round Lake's point of view here is what did they just do with the roads?
Right.
Because they're not quite sure.
Well, the other interesting thing is if the town of Hayward has these as private roads, those would be roads that are, interest to the owners of those said lots. And if the town of Round Lake has them as public roads, how can you get to your public roads if you're not trespassing across private roads to get there?
And this is why I've been trying to reach out to Round Lake for the last 2 weeks to have some type of intergovernmental cooperation and a discussion on what they were thinking going forward, but it just has not happened yet. So, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
So in relation to the road issue, so on the prelim plat, the roads are laid out as outlots. And so they're platted as its own piece of land, that 66-foot wide. Typically, that would get deeded to the township for the public road. And that's how it's laid out right now. But since this just came up, I think how I'd like to proceed is keep the prelim plats as they are, but those road outlots should just be, we will dedicate them to the homeowners association. And then, the HOA will maintain the roads until such time as the HOA or the town or both would be interested in making town roads of them, in which case there would be no additional survey work needed other than just transferring the ownership of that outlot with the roads to the town. So initially, being that we wanted private roads anyway, and with these issues, I think we'll probably, the town of Round Lake approved this as public roads, as a prelim plat. But since the issue of driving through a private road in the town of Hayward to get to them would be an issue, I think we should approach it as just, let's assume they're private roads for now until we get a number of homes in there. And if the town is, there's enough tax base for the town to take them over and the HOA wants them taken over, then we address it then. But until then, I think we can just say these are private roads that the HOA will maintain, and I don't think any additional work will be necessary.
Okay. All right, Mr. Neese.
Bill Neese, former member of the planning commission, of which went through this last year with a lot of this, and the terms get us all messed up. Because what the planning commission, the town is looking at is the width of the roads, and that the roads, because someday they will become, the town will be taking them over. If when he gets done with 110 houses, the people will want, what am I paying my taxes for? But at this point in time, the town did not want to be, because of the mess they have with their ordinances, obligated to pave roads or take care of roads for a developer that has nothing. And all of a sudden, you're adding value added at expense that you're not going to collect back. So the object is to have within the plat, which I believe it is, that you've left enough room for the roads to be, they would meet the standards of 66 feet and so forth. So that's clarification. So.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Anyone else want to speak?
And I'll just kind of jump in as, as zoning administrator, I kind of like that route to go with the roads. The only thing I'd, I guess, be interested in, I want to probably have a conversation with our land records department, is that if the outlots would be owned by one HOA entity, or if the outlots would have a divided interest of each lot owner within each phase. So phase one, again, we're looking at the, what was the number of that one? 22, that basically each lot would have a, 1/22 interest in outlots 1 and outlots 2 and outlots 3. That way, to sell those outlots to the town to be taken on as public roads, each individual lot owner would have to give up that interest. But there might be a different scenario in there. And I guess I would want to talk with land records, but as to how it sits right now, yeah, I like that. It leaves for some wiggle room to decide what to do with the roads if and when there's 110 houses in there.
So Jay, if we were to approve this or accept this, you would have that condition on it. Is that what you're saying?
It necessarily wouldn't be a
condition regarding the road.
condition. It would just be something we would need to figure out with land records, as, it's still land, right? And that land still needs to be owned by someone. It still needs to have an assessment. It still needs to be taxed, but it's whether or not one owner owns all the outlots or we do a 1/22 interest in the outlots. That way each lot owner owns a portion of that outlot, portion of that road. And I'll check with land records before this comes back to final plat approval as to how to really address that or how to solidify that with our records.
Ms. Zilmer?
Linda Zilmer, resident of Birchwood, Edgewater taxpayer, and I've been able to attend some meetings or watch online some of as this project has progressed. And when I saw the notice for this and it lists 3 outlets or 3 outlots in phase 1, 12 in 2 and 5 in 3. It reminded me of when Jim Bassett, who was the chair of this committee for over a dozen years, I believe, was faced with a situation that came up with Big Fish. And it happened with a couple of other subdivisions just previous to that. So what had happened was there was a big development and then there were little outlots. And of course, nobody paid the taxes on these outlots and they came back to the county for back taxes and then they weren't buildable. So I think Jay's point is very important and that somehow the town or the county needs to ensure that if these are outlots for roads, that it's addressed so the county doesn't find itself in that situation again. Because Jim Bassett said, he goes, I will never approve another subdivision with an outlot. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else want to speak? Any more questions? Oh, go ahead, sir.
In support or objection?
Whatever, come on up.
One needed.
Either or.
Yeah.
State your name and address, please.
I'm Tom Jenkins, property owner abutting the phase 2. I was notified, I got the notice last week. I was gone for all of the prior month. So I'm playing catch up here. So we've owned, let's see if I can show you on the map.
This is phase 2 right now. Or I'm sorry, phase 1.
Phase 1.
I'll try to get to phase
Do you see
2.
that from here?
Mhm.
Acres.
Okay.
That's 5 acres. This is not part of phase 1, but this is.
Gotcha.
So we've been landowners and homeowners since 1991 on this 9 acres adjacent to, it catches just part of phase 2. But my main concern is just the changing the integrity of the area. So, and I'm a former banker, so I kind of know about subdivisions and lending. And my first concern is, and no reflection on Mr. Hill or financial capability, is there's been several subdivisions built in the area that took forever to build. Right across from Club 77, they had to combine lots to build that out. The lady mentioned Big Fish. We all know that story. So my main concern would be, how long is it going to take once we disturb the topography to build all this land? And then, I don't know this business like you guys do, but, environmental study, I assume the DNR, everybody's going to check it out. I assume they'll all have wells. They'll all have septics. That's a lot of 100 units. That's a lot going on next to a wetlands. So I'm open to the topic, but it just seems it's a major, major area decision. Then lesser to it is, I tried to, I was going to sell my 9 acres to my neighbor on Round Lake. And so we had a conditional use permit to build a garage over there. And he backed out on me, so I forgot about it. But we marched it off. The state setbacks go a long way. So when I looked at phase 1 and those lots that are between Highway 77 and what I'll call a frontage road, I just asked the surveyor to double check the setbacks because of the house. I think it's 100 feet from the center line. and then it's 30 feet from that line.
It's 130 from center, 66 from right of way, which is ever greater.
Yeah, so I'd look at that plat carefully because I did it late last night with a ruler and it looked like that house is gonna have to go way into the lot away from Highway 77. So that's just one, issue I saw. The other thing is, I appreciate Mr. Hill talking about the intent of a recreational area around the Mosquito Brook, because one concern I have is I have on my Round Lake property, I have snowmobiles coming in and turning around in ATVs on a private road. And so on my 9 acres, that's been disturbed. It's been that way forever on the north side of 77. And from if everybody buys, I'm assuming people are going to buy these houses and have ATVs and snowmobiles. Are they just going to randomly go onto other private land? Because there is no access ATV or snowmobile on that section of Highway 77. So that something will have to be done with that access. But what I heard is there's existing trails back by Mosquito Brook. So just, it's just for me to learn about this in a week and process it all. It's a major undertaking. And this is a gorgeous area. And if we decide we're going to do this as a county, we better know what we're doing. And I'm sure you will. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else out there want to speak?
A little shorter. Thank you. Carmen Jenkins, 12841 Wildwood West. I have several concerns about this project. Number one, some of the best master carvers in the area have mentioned to me that in phase 2 and phase 1, there are groves of butternut, and that's one of the best carving woods. And I don't see any environmental impact study. And we're talking over 100 homes, 100 septics, 100 wells. And when Mr. Hill mentions that it's going to be a quiet neighborhood, I've never seen a development, a quiet 100-house homestead development. I've never seen that. I don't think anyone can promise that. And I believe that it's a very aggressive project for that environmental area. And at this point, I do oppose it. And the land we've had on Round Lake in 77, which abuts this project, we've been owners for over 30 years. So another question I have, and I guess this is more information, is there one entrance into the preserve? Is that adequate for fire, rescue, additional services, school buses, traffic? I think that's inadequate. That's nonsensical to me to have over 100 homes and one entrance and one exit for all those services. And again, fire, rescue, and just normal traffic. So I believe that we need much more information. We need an environmental impact study, a comprehensive one. I mean, we're talking 900 acres. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Right, anyone else out there want to speak? Mr. Hill, do you want to rebut on any of them that was said there?
Yeah, that'd be great. In terms of environmental impact study, our next steps are getting the wetlands delineated and getting a DNR stormwater management plan approved for this development. So the roadway, we can't start any roadway construction until we have those. We've contracted with NWBE engineering firm here in town, and they have hired an assured wetland delineator to delineate the wetlands within a 200-foot wide area centered wherever any roads are going to go. That's gonna take care of all the runoff from the roads. They're gonna design in swales, infiltration ponds, everything to take the water runoff from the roads there. In terms of impact of 100 homes, remember, these are 5-acre lots. It's huge. This is not a dense residential development. If you look at, say, something on Round Lake that's got 100-foot wide lots, half acres where you can clear cut everything down to 30 feet from the water, that's going to be way more damaging to the environment than, say, what we're proposing. In terms of some of the issues with houses backing up to the highway, our lots along the highway are 300 feet wide and 600 feet deep. They're 5 acres roughly. So in a 600-foot deep lot, I'm sure nobody's going to want to put a house right on the highway. They're going to want to stay as far away from that as possible. So I believe these are going to be, you're going to barely see the houses from the highway. In terms of the environment, we've come up with covenants that we feel are going to be well above and beyond the county standards for what we need to do for around the Mosquito Brook flowage. Our covenants include 75-foot home setback from the existing trail, not even the wetland edge, because technically if it's a lake, it's a 75-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark. If it's a wetland, which is what the DNR is going to consider this as when they pull the dam out, it's a 40-foot setback. We're proposing a 75-foot build setback from the edge of the trail, which is anywhere from 25 to 60 feet back from the ordinary high water mark. We're also, our covenants include a 50-foot vegetated setback from that trail. So basically, we want to see 50 feet of trees not cleared along that trail with only a 20-foot wide view corridor allowed. So all of those are well in excess of what the county zoning setbacks would be. In terms of environmental impact, once the roads are in, which the DNR has to approve that plan, we're looking at 5-acre lots, and we develop homes on lots all the time. Any use on that lot has to be done by land use permit through county zoning. County zoning is going to look at all those. In reality, 100 homes, 100 septics, the water is a closed loop system, right? We're going to pump up from a well. Everything you use in the home is going to infiltrate back through your septic drain field into the ground. So realistically, and a well can be 50 feet from a septic. If the county standard and state standard is that you can put a well 50 feet from your drain field, they're assuming the ground is going to, take care of any impurities there and filter that water. So we feel with 5-acre lots, the setbacks we've put in, and the fact that the DNR has to approve our roadway plan anyway, I feel that our environmental stewardship is done, and I feel this is the best use. Staying zone forestry is huge, right? We could have rezoned to residential, done much smaller lots, and maybe you would look at environmental impacts at that point, but staying 5-acre lots in forestry, I feel this is going to be really low impact for the environment and the forest.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Step up to the mic, please.
When we talk environmental impact, we don't always just mean roads and water. We also, a part of that, it constitutes wildlife and vegetation and the integrity of the forest there. I really, really would stress that we need to take a look at this land from a forestry. Yes, the DNR, we know what they do, but we're talking about Hayward. We're talking about our area that we live in, and we drive past there every day. I think these are also environmental considerations. And this, again, is a very aggressive project. And I want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna keep moving on here. I need a motion to come out of public hearing for the preserve on phase 1.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson, a second by Mr. Schuman to come out of public hearing on the preserve phase 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
So the next step would be that zoning committee would either conditionally accept or reject the preliminary plat for phase one. Again, phase one is for a 22 lot proposal, including 3 outlots, which at this point for the town of Hayward are to remain as private roads.
Okay. All right, committee.
So Jay, my question again is, are there any conditions on this that you expect us to put on?
The conditional acceptance, we'd already heard from the applicant, so he would be, willing to agree with them, would be, wetland delineation, a stormwater management plan. Those kind of go hand in hand. I don't think you can necessarily get a stormwater management plan on this type of site without doing a wetland delineation. Now, that would also be something that you would want to further conditional approval, the final plat, that prior to developing roads or developing lots, that those, check marks on those boxes are done with the stormwater management plan and the wetland delineation. And then it's really up to this committee as to what other things you may want to see. We go back to the subdivision ordinance as to, what abilities that the zoning committee has to implement on here. Where zoning committee finds that additional information is relative to a problem or concern proposed by the proposed subdivision is needed, the zoning committee shall have the authority to request such information from the subdivider. Such additional information may include, but is not limited to, soil borings conducted by a certified soil tester, a stormwater management plan under the provisions of NR 216, achieving of an erosion control performance standard of NR 151, or regional flood elevations. You can add additional things. It's included but not limited to those elements. Obviously, Sawyer County has not seen something to this magnitude before. I mean, somewhat similar to, the Fred Shear development of, the Brook North, Brook South. There's quite a few lot developments in there, and those tend to be, larger lots as well. And we really haven't heard any, complaints with those types of subdivisions. So yeah, this is certainly something out of my element as well. But I mean, there's certainly been some due diligence done on the subdivider's behalf as well as the surveyor, to try to map this out, lay this out, and go through the correct approval processes. So I would put it back to the committee as to, if you are rejecting, certainly state why as part of your rejection. And if you are, conditionally approving the prelim plat, again, state, what other conditions you may have in there. Again, we'd heard from the subdivider for wetland delineation, stormwater management plan. Now would be the time to really get everything out on the table. Again, yes, we're looking at phase one as just the 22 lot, but, ultimately, we have 3 phases before us. So you'd want to duplicate any of those conditional approvals, for all of them.
Go ahead. Chairman, I do think that the subdivision ordinance does state that the county may require an environmental impact study.
Yep. It does as well. That's under. That's preliminary.
Well, that could just be stated in the acceptance too, couldn't it, Jay?
It could. It's part of that included, not limited. I know there's a separate paragraph that does address that, you can do the environmental impact study. But if you were to require an environmental impact study, you would want to specifically mention as to what aspects, because an EIS in general is a very broad term. You would want to limit it to what you would want see conducted as part of that EIS, whether it was for, vegetation type of the, health of the forest, or as to the aspects of wildlife impacts, or to the effect of, groundwater for the additional 112 well or 110 wells. So you want to be very specific as to if you are going to require an EIS as to what elements you want that EIS conducted under.
That's a lot.
Yes. The zoning committee may require an environmental impact analysis. Such analysis shall be at the expense of the subdivider. The zoning committee shall determine the content of the analysis. It also further states here that a list of possible analysis requirements are available in the zoning department. I have never seen one of those. I don't believe that exists anywhere that I was able to locate. But as part of the several month process that this has been even coming to this committee, that is where, I did look into some of that research and, look at some other, case law aspects that, again, you wouldn't want to just say, we're going to require an EIS is done. If you are requiring an EIS, you need to be specific into what elements you're wanting that EIS to determine.
So what would happen, Jay, if we decided not to accept this until we have all that information? Then bring it back to the committee. I know there's been a lot of work on your part and Mr. Hill's part, but I want to make sure that the committee's getting all the information that they need. And I know you accepted the application. I guess I'm just trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing here. And I, with everybody talking about all the housing shortages and stuff in the Hayward and the surrounding counties, I mean, this guy's gonna build some homes, and I'm for that part of it, but I guess committee, what are you looking for? What do you think we should do? And it was hard. Any input, John?
The point you just brought up about the environmental impact study has to be done eventually. Your point being that, can that be done beforehand so we can make an educated decision is well taken?
Or would it have to come back at the final decision? Okay.
So I guess is how I'm kind of reading the ordinances here. You have to make some type of decision today, and those decisions would be one of three things: reject, approve, or conditionally approve. If you are requiring an applicant to go through an EIS, you would almost want to conditionally approve the prelim plat, and then before accepting the final plat, have that EIS conducted for specific elements of the EIS. And if the EIS report comes back that, says that there'll be increased detrimental effects on wildlife, then at that point you would have grounds to reject a final plat. If an EIS comes back and your concerns are addressed as part of that and additional things can be done to mitigate those things. Again, I always run into issues, I guess, personally, where if you're putting this type of study onto an applicant, or you're requiring something that's going to end up costing an applicant a considerable amount of money, to have them come back and prove that it's not going to do these types of effects, I'd hate that you would reject it at that final stage then,
Yeah.
right? Because you put this applicant through quite a bit of legwork for naught, right? So that's where you'd almost want to conditionally approve. And if the EIS determines that it's not going to have those types of effects, you'd hate to have a change of mind and just say, no, we don't like it. That's my personal aspects. I probably shouldn't state on that on record, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from with that, that if you're going to require that type of stuff.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hill, is the applicant willing to do an EIS? If we were to conditionally approve this, that you do that, sir?
I'd rather not, just because it sounds like this could be a 6-month process. It seems a little overreach, and I know this seems like a large project and it probably feels like you need to do something, to protect the public welfare in this, but at the same time, we develop home sites all the time. And, these are 5-acre lots, well laid out. The DNR has to approve the roads, which is the major construction portion, and that, so, it's no different than, say, Goldfinch Lane, which is just to the east of us, whatever, they took a 40 acres and did 5-acre lots out of it. And it's a really nice neighborhood, right? Small road goes up, you can barely see the houses. And that's what this is gonna be. It's a little larger thing, but it's gonna be over the course of 10 years. We've got an approved DOT highway access permit for one entrance on the highway. I feel like the time involved with an EIS is out of reach of what we're doing here in light of the fact that we have large lots and covenants that are well in excess of county zoning standards as far as protecting the environment and what's there.
I guess my question is to the committee, do you feel that we need to put a condition on this? Jay? Think we do, or?
Yeah, I can't speak for the aspects of the EIS. I believe that specifically to the committee. I don't want to impact your decision on the EIS because that is a large consideration to make. It is. An EIS could easily cost upwards of 6 figures to do out here. Maybe even more. I don't even know how much an EIS ended up costing. I mean, we did hear from the applicant that, they are needing to do a wetland delineation. And they've contracted with Northwest Building Engineer here in Hayward to provide that wetland delineation. In conjunction with the wetland delineation, they are doing a stormwater management plan with the DNR. If you were going to conditionally approve, I would certainly, reiterate those, as again, the applicant was already agreeing to those. But the other aspects of an EIS, again, if you are going to require it, I'm going to leave that specifically on you. But if you do, make sure that you give the, parameters of that EIS. Again, just don't say, we need an environmental impact study. That is not the route you want to go. You want to lay out specifically what you want shown as part of that impact study.
So Jay, the wetland delineation and the stormwater management, is that approved by the DNR or managed by the DNR, or how would you say?
So the wetland delineation really doesn't get approval from anyone. It's a private insured wetland delineator that has credentials from the state of Wisconsin to basically do a boundary determination of where the wetlands exist, right?
Yeah.
The DNR then further has statutes as far as filling, grading, or disturbing of a wetland. So that's why they're laying out the boundaries as to not do disturbance within the wetland areas, right? The stormwater management plan is looking at, because of development, because of earth excavation, we need to show and basically capture water runoff so that it is not impacting other properties, not impacting the wetlands. Because you don't want to put a road right next to the wetland, you get a heavy rain event, and now all that loose earth material is going to the wetland. Now you've in sense just filled a wetland. So that's what the stormwater management plan is doing. It's a twofold. It's laying out where these wetland boundaries are, and then how you're going to protect this loose earth material from not entering into the wetland. And you heard from the applicant that they're looking at doing, infiltration basins, which is a common practice for stormwater management. Basically, you're digging a shallow trench, matching the contours so that that water is then going into almost an artificially created wetland. You basically dig a hole and kind of line it with some additional rock so that that water is able to sit within that area before, dispersing back into the ground.
Sure.
Okay.
Can we hear from court counsel real quick?
That was what I was just gonna say.
Okay.
Kylie, can we have your
Hi.
input on that, please?
Listen to all this.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Jay. So if you are going to put an EIS, if you're going to condition it with an EIS, you need to be very, very specific because you're placing a pretty high burden on the applicant here. So if that's something that the committee wants, and again, this is a committee's decision, this is also not my decision, try to be as specific as possible about what you're looking for and maybe even what you want that outcome to be. Because if you then later reject it, you need to be basing that upon what you've already noticed and told the applicant prior to that. But again, this is something you guys need to think about. What are you looking for here? What would make this more comfortable for you?
Well, my opinion is I hate to stick more cost on the gentleman, but I'm also concerned about the environment also, but
Ron, the town of Round Lake has been working on an environmental impact statement of what we would require for that. And we've been working on it for months. I can't imagine coming up right now with what we want in an environmental impact statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From my own perspective, when I look at this, and I live in a neighborhood where we have 1.83 acre lots, and I think there's plenty of elbow room there. So I have to say, for basically 3 times the lot size, I think it's going to be a very quiet neighborhood with that much buffer around each residence. So.
Okay. All right. Mr. Schuman.
Well, I guess, Mr. Chairman, then I would make a motion to approve the preliminary county subdivision plat for phase 1, 22 lots with the condition of a water delineation and stormwater management plan, Jay? Is that what I say? Or
Yeah, what a wetland delineation.
wetland delineation?
An approved stormwater management plan prior to, I guess, road development.
Yep.
And you're okay with that?
Certainly.
Okay.
Motion for phase 1 then.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve phase 1. Do we have a second? Anybody want to second that? I will second that to approve phase 1. Is there any more discussion?
I'd like to include in that approval that we accept the proposed protective covenants of 4/23/24 as listed, 1 through 25.
Okay, Schuman, you okay with that?
Yep, I would add that. I should have mentioned that.
Okay, all right.
Excuse me. Okay.
Could you repeat those numbers or is it everything?
1 through 25.
All of
Yeah,
them. Okay,
the
thank you. I
applicant, as
just wanted-
part of the submittal of the preliminary plat procedure, has also included the proposed protective covenants. Those are listed in my staff report there too, Kathy, so we can grab those from there.
Yep, I agree.
And those carry to each one of the phases. And maybe I should just go through those for those that haven't seen that. Those, again, covenants that the applicant would put on each individual lot as they're sold, would be that there'd be no subdivision of the lots, 1 dwelling unit per lot, structures allowed are single family homes, multiple homes are not allowed. All building plans, site plans, and exterior colors shall be subject to review by the HOA board prior to construction. That there'd be a noise ordinance and noise is kept to a minimum. Exterior lighting shall be down lighting or those types as to preserve dark sky. Exterior lighting subject to HOA review if complaints are lodged. That building setbacks from all lot lines shall be 30 feet from side lot lines, 75 feet from roads and community trails, and 75 feet from the Mosquito Brook flowage. Garages are to be allowed 20 feet from side lot lines. There'd be a 50-foot vegetated buffer zone to remain along Mosquito Brook flowage, all wetlands, community trails, and all roads, with the exception of a viewing and access corridor not to exceed 20 feet wide and kept to a minimum of clearing. That lot access to come off of development roads and not county highways or county property. All types of homes are allowed except not trailer homes or mobile homes. Exterior colors shall be natural colors and shall blend with the environment. Area cleared for the home yard pole barn not to exceed a ½ acre. Pole barn shall be limited to 2,400 square feet and 25 feet in height and shall be natural colors to blend with the forest. Vehicles, no abandoned, unlicensed, inoperable, or junk vehicles, debris piles, or other unattractive items. No semi-truck parking or trailer other than household deliveries. Completion of exterior buildings shall be completed within 12 months of excavation start. All roads and private trails are accessible by all residents and guests of the preserve. No commercial activities allowed other than those specified and approved by the HOA. No burning of household garbage or debris or other woody debris from the lot itself. Any damage caused to roads, facilities, or neighboring properties to be remediated within 10 days. All property owners shall be assessed the same fees for trail maintenance regardless of location. No lot owner shall grant public easement to county property through their lots to prevent ATV snowmobile traffic through the development. No signage or displays to be posted on the roadways or highways other than the normal realty type sized signs. No signage or displays to be posted on the roads or highways. Oh, I already read that one. All motorized vehicles other than automobiles are subject to a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit on developed roads. Animals are allowed are dogs, cats, and chickens, no other farm animals. Boathouses are not allowed, and covenants shall continue in perpetuity. And we see these covenants, or these types of covenants, fairly often in these types of subdivisions. But again, this applicant, as to some of the specific requirements, goes above and beyond the minimum requirements that Sawyer County zoning ordinances would have in place.
Good, thanks, Jake. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve phase one. If there's no more discussion, Marshall, you got anything you want to throw out there?
No, I have nothing.
Okay, Kathy, we'll do a roll call, please, then.
Okay. Marshall Savitsky,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Kay Wilson.
Yes.
Tweet Schuman,
Yes.
John Saralski.
Yes.
All in favor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's for the preliminary.
Yes, so moving on, this is the public hearing for phase two of the preliminary county subdivision plat. This is for a 30-lot proposal, including 12 outlots. The owner again being the Preserve at MBF LLC, care of Jeremy Hill. This is located in the town of Round Lake. Again, this would require either approval, conditional approval, or rejection. Very similar to phase one. We've heard, quite a bit of the discussion, around the entire development as a whole. But again, is how the approval processes work. We are, basing these on each individual phase. Granting of one phase approval does not guarantee approval of a second phase. The legal descriptions are included as part of the staff report for the phase two development. Zoning administrator, myself have, conditionally approved the preliminary plats. They have been deemed necessary to comply with the provisions. The road aspect would be the interesting one, as we do have a member from the town of Round Lake Town Board that can potentially speak more into those aspects as to what the town is looking at for road developments, be it in the town of Round Lake. Again, the phase one was specifically just in the town of Hayward. Phase two and phase three are entirely within the town of Round Lake. We had heard from the subdivider previously that prior to any lot development, they will need a wetland delineation and a stormwater management plan, and that all these phase developments would carry those same covenants as previously read into record for phase one. That is all.
Okay, all right.
And the town of Round Lake did approve phase two and phase three. But the sheet we'd gotten back from the clerk had really no other additional comments on it. So I don't know, again, as far as this potential EIS development that the town was working on, as well as the road development, I don't know where the town stands on those.
Okay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing for the Preserve on phase two.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman to go into public hearing on the Preserve phase two. Do I have a second?
Second.
And we have a second by Mr. Saralski to go into public hearing on the Preserve phase two. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. We are now in public hearings on phase two. Mr. Hill, do you want to speak on this?
Yeah, so really the roads and kind of the town position is the two things that to discuss. As far as the roads, again, I feel like, I believe that since somebody would be entering in a private road through the town of Hayward, that the town of Round Lake roads would just remain private roads until such time as town of Hayward, if that would turn to town road, then would address at that point. Town of Round Lake Plan Commission approved this with no conditions. Town of Round Lake Board approved it with no conditions. They are working on some subdivision ordinances and some other things for future projects. But this project has been approved and those wouldn't apply.
Okay. Hey, sir, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
got, Mr. Hill, what about the environmental study that the town of Round Lake is doing themselves and who's paying for that or
I believe they're,
what does that involve? Kate, could you help us with that?
We're working on that with our subdivision ordinance, but it has not been tweaked to be complete as yet. So it would not apply to Jeremy's project.
And the town also was looking to maintain these as private roads?
Well, we weren't sure when we were discussing this the other night. I do know that Ralph was concerned about the amount of roads that the town would have to assimilate into their two-man crew. And we didn't feel that we could do that at this point, but we did not put anything on the condition. But I think I can speak for the town and say that we would want the roads dedicated to the HOA as private roads until further time.
Okay. And I know one of the distinctions from the town of Hayward to the town of Round Lake was the width in which they wanted the clearing of the roads, where the town of Hayward, I believe, wanted it cleared the full 66 feet of width. And that probably should be a conversation that the town would have during the final plat approval for Round Lake as to what you want the clearing width to be for emergency services and accesses such as that. The Sawyer County subdivision ordinance would require a minimum 20 feet of width of clearing to a height of 16 feet. That is what the county ordinance specifies, but the town of Round Lake can certainly, implement a condition for approval that they're either, cleared to a wider width. Now, it has to be platted still as a 66, but when you're talking about actually your road base of your gravel or your tree removal, I would suspect it's going to probably be a little bit more than 20, but maybe not to the full extent to 66. Now, if you wanted to mirror as how Hayward wants a 66-foot wide clearing, again, those are conversations that should be really kind of developed with the town. And then I would like to see the towns kind of reciprocate that to the committee, to the county, when it comes to the final plat approval.
Okay.
Jay and Mr. Hill, are either of these phases more or less environmentally sensitive? I mean, you've looked at it, right?
Yeah, I would assume, phase 2 and phase 3 are obviously going to be a little bit more environmentally sensitive, and those are the lots that abut the Mosquito Brook flowage. There are additional wetland complexes within those. Phase 2 and phase 3 is not so much as in phase 1. Phase 1 is a little bit higher, a little bit, again, situated further by the highway. Phase 2 and phase 3, be it, closer to the Mosquito Brook flowage and lots that abut it.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions for Mr. Hill? Mr. Sorolski?
Yes, I'd just like to know from Jeremy, what would be the length of the roads? And I'm going to also be going into phase 3, total amount of road in your estimation?
I believe when this is all said and done, the town of Hayward would have 2 miles of road and the town of Round Lake would have 3 miles. But with the phases being what they are, that'd be less than that. So this is probably 2 miles of town of Round Lake Road and mile and a half of town of Hayward.
Okay.
Our plan at this point would be to build the roads to pretty much to town specs. Town of Hayward's requiring a 66-foot cleared right away, totally cleared to the edge of the road of trees. And town of Round Lake doesn't currently have a road ordinance in place. We're going to probably follow that same sort of thing. I think we want this to be easily accessible for school buses, emergency vehicles, that kind of thing. So we're not planning on any crazy narrow roads. And, our goal would probably be to have these accepted as town roads someday. So we're going to plan to build them to town road spec initially anyway.
Yeah, it would just make it easier down the road. You're exactly right.
You don't have to redo the road. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Hill? Marshall, Mr. Savitsky, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, sir. All right, does anybody out there want to speak in favor of this public hearing or this preserve phase two? Mrs. Omer?
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, Birchwood resident. The notice for this and the zoning administrator are pretty clear that the zoning committee has three options to either accept, conditionally accept, or reject. So in this phase two, would it be appropriate to say that if you are going to require the stormwater management plan, the wetland delineation, the covenants, that would be a conditional acceptance versus in the phase one, the motion was to approve and all you did was approve. And that was what was voted on. So if you could have the discussion now in phase two of what the proper motion would be in vote and then go back and revisit number one, I think it's clear. I know I'm confused sitting back here as to actually what happened. The other thing about, I'm glad there's been a lot of discussion on the roads. The other thing I heard when I attended a Round Lake board meeting is a member of their fire department was there. And they were concerned not just with the road access, but if it's Round Lake that is responding to a fire in like phase two or three, where will they be getting water? And I know that there was a question to either the developer or the surveyor about maybe dry hydrants. And if the town of Round Lake wishes to also have some kind of requirement for accessing fire or accessing water for fire protection, please discuss that also.
Mr. Chairman, my motion on phase one was to conditionally approve with the water delineation, stormwater management, and the covenants, just for correction.
That should be all we need.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else out there want to speak in favor? Are you speaking in favor, ma'am?
I have some points in favor, yes.
Okay.
When I mentioned environmental impact study, I didn't mean counting butterflies. I meant specifically the butternut trees. I believe portions of this preserve have qualities that will really help the area and the economy. But I think I believe we can be specific to those butternut trees. And we're not talking about $1 zillion here. We have experts in our area that can assist Mr. Hill and the development company. And remember, that's a not-for-profit organization. We're talking about Mr. Hill and his associates will be making money on this project. So why it behooves you to consider a specific portion of that environmental study, whether it be Round Lake or whomever, to identify those butternut trees and the groves of those trees and not to just tear them down. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else out there want to speak? Okay, committee, you have no more questions? All right, I need a motion to come out of public hearing on the preserve phase two.
I make that motion.
Second,
We
Chairman.
have a motion by Ms. Wilson, a second by Mr. Schuman, to come out of public hearing on the preserve phase two. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
This is the discussion action for the preserve phase two preliminary plat approval process. This is for a 30 lot proposal, including 12 outlots. This requires zoning committee acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection.
Okay. I got one question. This lady keeps talking about butternut trees. Is that in the town of Hayward one that she's talking about? Go ahead, Mr. Hill. Do you know where they're at?
I'm not familiar with butternut trees on the property, at least not any extensive groves. And to address the fire protection issue, the town of Round Lake Fire Chief looked at this, said there's several water sources within 3-4 miles, Twin Lakes Road, Linden Road.
Okay.
They suggested we put in a dry hydrant if there was a spot available for that, which we agreed to if there's any sort of water source that's significant enough within access to fire trucks, we're happy to do that. We told them, but as of this time, I don't know of any big enough water sources near any of our roads to do that, but we'd certainly be open to that.
Yeah, because if the DNR is going to remove that dam, I don't think they're gonna be able to get a dry hydrant into the Mosquito Brook flowage and at that point, so, and I've been back on this property before. With the dam in, yeah, there's potential with the dam out. I don't know where you would end up installing a dry hydrant.
There's a couple of spring prawns on the very east side, but they're not near any roads, so. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Lieutenant Feldner did an analysis and he drove around and looked and looked and looked. And he determined that Bussey Road in the town of Round Lake would be a adequate spot to draw water, and the town will probably have to put a dry hydrant there. So for winter, so that he didn't have to drill, into the ice so we're looking at that, but he gave his approval on the fire protection.
Okay. All right, thanks, Keith. All right. Yeah, okay, I guess nobody's really aware, but that woman, so, all right, how do you guys want to do this? Turn it over to you to make your decision.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would conditionally approve phase 2 of this preliminary county subdivision plat for 19 lots. With the conditions I mentioned earlier in phase 1.
Phase 2 is for 30 lots.
30 lots. Oh, I'm sorry. 30 lots. Oh, that was 3. Thanks, Jay. I was in 3 already. For the 30 lot proposal with the conditional approval, Kathy, of what I mentioned earlier.
Which would be a wetland delineation.
Wetland
stormwater
delineation
management
and stormwater management.
And the covenants.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Kowalski, sorry. Mr. Sorolski to approve the preserve phase 2 with conditions. Any more discussion?
I think it would be interesting if we could have a county forester go out there and take a look at these butternut trees to see if they're how big of a stand, if it's worth putting a condition on it, if we could just have somebody go take a look.
Can you handle that?
Yeah, we'd have to talk with the county forestry department. I wouldn't have I do know identification species, but I wouldn't be comfortable identifying all the butternuts out there. I can have a conversation with our county forester to see if he would have anyone available to do that in conjunction with Mr. Hill. If you want to make that condition, I guess that would trigger me to go out and get that done. I guess what are you hoping to accomplish in that if identified butternut, that they are to be preserved at all reasonable measures?
Well, I guess that's what I would say that they would want to put in their motion is to have if all possible, to have these butternut trees preserved so they're not cut down or whatever, destroyed. You want to answer to that?
Yeah. I don't know that rerouting our roads, being that we've submitted this to the engineering firm and they're already working on stormwater plan, a wetland delineation based on this road network. I don't know that it makes sense to reroute roads based on butternuts, but I would be willing to just voluntarily take, anyone out there that wanted to, as well as the forester. And if there are butternuts that are going to be in the way of the roads, perhaps we could harvest those and give those to them, or, some way, make that mutually beneficial. But I don't know that needs to be a condition on the development, but I just offer that.
Right, I appreciate that, Mr. Hill.
Yes, I do too. And I don't know I don't hear many butternut trees around in Sawyer County, so that's why
I've walked down.
I'm just interested in what she was talking about on the butternut trees, so.
Indeed. I know what butternuts are and I've not seen any, but it's not to say they're not there.
Okay.
All right, so you want to put that in your motion?
No, I'm good with my motion, sir.
Okay.
I'm good with Mr. Hill meeting with the neighbors.
All right,
Yep.
okay. So that works for me. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve.
Conditional.
Conditional acceptance. Any more discussion? Kathy, you want to do a roll call?
Yes. Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Kay Wilson. Tweet Schuman.
Yes.
John Saralski.
Yes.
Marshall Savitsky.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's a public hearing for the Preserve Phase 3 preliminary county subdivision plat 19 lot proposal, including 5 outlots. Owner, again, the Preserve at MBF LLC, care of Jeremy Hill. This again would require acceptance, conditional acceptance or rejection as part of the Phase 3 development. Again, this is all included in the town of Round Lake. This kind of focuses around the south end of the existing Mosquito Brook flowage. Again, 19 lots, including 5 outlots. Let the record reflect as well, during the conversations of all 3 of these phases, that would be incorporated into the record through the Phase 3 discussion and action portion. I guess I'll leave it up to the committee if you have any additional questions from there. But you would ultimately still want to make, the carried over conditional approval conditions if you are wanting to approve Phase 3.
Okay, I need a motion to go into public hearing on the Preserve Phase 3.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman, second by Ms. Wilson to go into public hearing on the Preserve Phase 3. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are now in public hearing.
And
Okay,
also the
Mr.
town of Round
Oh,
Lake
sorry.
did, and
Sorry.
the town of Round Lake did approve Phase 3 as well.
All right. All right, Mr. Hill. You want to speak or no? Okay, it's fine.
Unless you have any additional questions.
All right, thank you. So would anybody out there want to speak in favor of this?
Phase 3.
Phase 3? Too many phases, right? Anybody want to speak in disapproval of Phase 3? Okay, not need a motion to come out of public hearing on the Preserve Phase 3. please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson, second by Mr. Schuman to come out of public hearing on the Preserve Phase 3. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are now out of public hearing. So committee, turn it right back over to you and how you want to vote on this.
I make a motion to conditionally approve Phase 3 with the wetland delineation, the stormwater and the covenants as listed 1 through 25.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Wilson, second by Mr. Schuman to approve or accept conditional acceptance on the Preserve Phase 3. Any more discussion? If not, roll call, Kathy, please.
Kay Wilson.
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Marshall Savitsky.
Yes.
John Saralski. I'm sorry. Tweet Schuman.
Yes.
All in favor for preliminary.
Okay, we got through them phases. All right, number 6.
This is a proposed ordinance amendment. This is a public hearing for the Sawyer County zoning ordinance amendment to section 4.26, number 2. This is for storage sheds and the storage structure exemption. Language to change to read that on number 2, that the exemption is not allowed in platted subdivisions unless town approval is granted. There was a motion last month to send this out to the towns for their review. We had gotten those town comments back. We had 8 for denial, 7 for approval. The one that we didn't receive formally but had been verbally told by the town of Meadowbrook was that it was for denial. For the approvals, we have Town of Bass Lake approved. Granting approval would not be contrary to public interest and would be in compliance with the spirit and intent of Surrey County zoning ordinance and the Town of Bass Lake comprehensive plan, as it would not be damaging the rights or others' property values. Approved with the following conditions. Exemption is not allowed in platted subdivisions unless approved by the town. Town of Coudray approved. Phil Miles voted no, but it still had majority approval. Town of Draper denied, belongs under comprehensive current enforcement. I can't really read the writing there, but ultimately Town of Draper denied. Town of Edgewater denied, but this one's a little interesting. They wanted to allow without town approval. So they just wanted to allow storage sheds in platted subdivisions. They didn't want it to even go through the town, but ultimately they denied the proposed ordinance language. Town of Hayward denied, no additional comments. Town of Hunter denied, no additional comments. Town of Lenroot approved. Town of Meteor approved. Town of Ojibwa denied. Town of Radisson approved. We ask only one shipping container. Ultimately, the provision of the storage shed exemption on vacant land would only allow for up to 144 square foot storage shed. This could be as a shipping container, but a shipping container would A, require additional town approval, and B, would have to be less than 144 square feet. Most of the common shipping containers are more than 144 square feet. There are a few companies building what are known as pods, and these pods may be 10 by 10 or 10 by 14, but they are exceptionally more expensive than your standard 10 by 20 or 10 by 40 shipping container. Town of Round Lake denied. Town of Sand Lake denied. Keep the present ordinance as it is and is worded now. Town of Weirgor approved. Town of Winter approved. Again, as per the town opinion letters, 8 for denial, 7 for approval. I am again stating my position as part of this proposed ordinance amendment that I am neutral on this. I really do not have any type of recommendation or way this should go. This was initially proposed to me by the town of Bass Lake, that they were seeing a number of requests of those wanting to do shipping, or not shipping, they wanted to do storage shed exemptions on their lands that were used for camping. And some of those were in the Northwoods Beach subdivision area, and they were then told no. So the town of Bass Lake proposed to me, is there a way that we can kind of, grant approvals for these? They initially proposed it as those that are engaged in camping. And while we have seen, several of these storage shed exemption permits come into the zoning office, not all of them are engaged in camping. 95% of them are. So I told the town, I can't specifically break this out or piecemeal this out for camping, because that would be a more complicated route to go. And I said, the one thing we can do is propose it here and remove the language of number 2, that they'd be allowed in platted subdivisions. At the previous month meeting, it was a previous committee member, Stacy Hessel, that actually made a good recommendation. Said, well, why don't you just add language that the towns have the power, and if they want to see storage sheds in platted subdivisions, why don't we grant them their town approval aspects? So that is how we had formed that language and sent out. Again, you have 8 in denial, 7 in approval as kind of that town petition process. We still would have an official public hearing at the Surrey County Zoning Committee level. And then the Surrey County Zoning Committee, would ultimately vote on whether or not they want to, recommend approval to county board or recommend denial to county board. If it's recommended as denial to county board, we still hold it through the process. And looking at the state statutes, and we kind of developed this and found this through the multi-dwelling development portion. What we send out to the towns is more of like a notification and, the aspects of, would you support this change? Would you not support this change? The official route still to go is for them to submit an actual copy to the clerk as far as an action of denial. And if there are more than the majority in denial after the ordinance has undergone a public hearing process, then the ordinance fails and it cannot move forward. So again, even though you have an 8-7 denial, you would still move this process forward to the more formal route. If the committee thinks that an 8-7 denial does not merit enough for it to move on to county board, well, then you would want to make a recommendation of denial. Make sense or no?
Yeah, it does. I guess, you know, if we base it off towns approval. If we got 8 that for denial and 7 for it, I believe, I don't see where we need to push this any farther because we got a majority vote for denial. So.
Right, and that's it's not the official route in which you would deny a proposed ordinance amendment. It is a kind of a poll of the town. It's the initial poll of the town. Now, again, taking that poll information as a committee, that's where you would, if that is your opinion, make a recommendation for denial after we open it up for the
We
public
gotta go
hearing.
into a public hearing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I need a motion to go into public hearing for the zoning ordinance amendment to section 4.26.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Sorowski and a second by Mr. Schuman to go into public hearing on the zoning ordinance amendment of section 4.26 storage sheds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We're now in public hearing.
And I have a hand raised online for Steve Binding.
Go ahead, Mr. Binding.
Hey, morning, everybody. How you doing today?
Good.
Steve Binding, Town Draper, Blaisdell Lake Road and Draper, also on the town board as a supervisor. I guess I just wanted to clarify what we approved or did not approve. And for us, it felt like it belonged under the camping ordinance because we kind of tracked down the beginning origins of this change, and it was because of campers. So the second reason for us to deny is we identified some of these structures that would be in this type of violation for our type 3 camper ordinance. We contacted zoning and we haven't heard back. So that's kind of where we left that. And I guess to share one other thing, if this isn't the official yes or no, then I think the town clerks probably should be notified that they need to submit the resolutions with this to avoid any type of confusion on what town boards and plan commissions are approving at that local municipality level, right? That's it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
All right. Mr. Neese.
That was very interesting comments from Jay this morning, because I've sat here for 30 years. And when the town's approved or denied, they always had the opinion, and I understand what you're saying is correct. But that's not the way it's been done in Sawyer County. If the towns that approved this, then it was an approval. It would go to the county board with town approval, or you would send it or didn't send it out. So I find it interesting on this one that even though Jay says has no thing, we're bringing up all the T's and dots. Anyway, moving on. If, you know, I sent a letter and I hope you all got it. And of course, I'm against this because I do own property in Northwoods Beach. But of the people that voted yes, there are 162 subdivisions in Sawyer County. Less than 20% of them are actually in, have voted yes, are in those towns. Most of them, Meteor doesn't have any. And there's some other towns that don't have any, and there's some that no, Meadowbrook doesn't have any. And the big one is the town of Hayward. They have 19 plus, well, you have 18, now they're gonna have 19. So I would encourage you to not stick your finger at this point in the town's eye by saying we really don't have to pay attention to you. We just sent this out to get you to tell us, give us a little opinion and so forth. So anyway, I'm pretty emotional on this because I think it is probably the reality of saying that the towns would have the power. And that's the reason most of the yeses came, because you thought you had town power. The first one you approve in a subdivision, you would never, ever be able to absolutely not approve the rest of them. You're basically opening the whole thing up. Because what would be your reasoning why I gave it to Ron? I'm not gonna give it to John, because I don't like John. No, I like John. But the point being, once you open the first one up, you would have to have a heck of a reason not to open, you basically open the whole subdivision up to it. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
You bet.
Mrs. Omer? I got a hand up on mine. Okay.
Linda Zilmer, Birchwood resident, Edgewater property owner. Having been here for 20 years, watching these meetings, I clearly remember when this shed ordinance discussion came up. The county does not allow you to build a garage or a storage barn on a vacant lot unless it goes through a different process. So this almost seems like, well, you're not going to allow it for that, but you're going to allow it for small sheds. Again, it was brought forward with the idea it would be for campers, but then it was not attached to the ordinance that way. At the time of the discussion, I think current committee member asked the zoning administrator, well, what's happening with other towns or other counties, because other counties do allow this. And so some of the things, the unintended consequences in other counties was, well, once you build the 144-foot shed, then next thing there's a deck, and next thing you know, people are staying in them. And then there's more than just the 144-foot shed. And I believe Mr. Binding said that they have some things that they called into the zoning department about that may not be in compliance with the ordinance. But what was discussed recently at town levels was that, and it's the overall problem with zoning not having enough ability to enforce its ordinances. If the door's open to this, clearly the department does not have the ability to keep up and enforce it. And I don't know if you did right now, how many you would find out there in violation, but this opened a door. And I don't think the county wants to open it any wider, especially in subdivisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hand raised from Martin Hanson.
Martin Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martin Hanson, 11078N Robin Lane. I wish to register my opposition to this change. Two reasons. One, I think that allowing storage shed on vacant land in this manner is a reasonable probability of owners' stuff getting larger than the shed available and creating an unsightly appearance with owner's property outside of the storage shed. My reason two is the county already prohibits garages on vacant lands. I think allowing a storage shed on vacant land opens the door for that discussion again and raises some consistency in application. And I guess my third, I would agree with Mr. Neese. If a town were to deny a storage shed on a platted vacant parcel in one subdivision, I don't understand how they could not approve a second one and be consistent within a subdivision. So approval of one is tacit approval for all lots in a subdivision. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, sir.
I should just at least make the clarification. So the storage shed exemption is already in current ordinance. The change that's being requested is that right now, the exemption for these storage sheds is not allowed in platted subdivisions, and the language subject to change would be that unless town approval is granted. So there was no, official aspects to eliminate the storage shed exemption or to add the storage shed exemption in, because it is already in. We're looking at specifically as number 2 of the already approved 4.26.
Yeah.
And Jay, we have a majority of the towns that are denying this. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And have all the towns weighed in? You said one town mentioned they don't want anything coming to them or something.
Yeah, so the town of Edgewater, it did go down as a denial, but they denied in that they would not even want
Oh, I see.
the town approval aspect, that it would be approved in platted subdivisions. From what I guess, and I can't speak to that, but to me, it looks like the town of Edgewater doesn't want to hear these requests at the town level. You know, we do this similarly in other town approval aspects where, you know, those that are part of a town, you see, we get, you know, land use permit applications for building of a residential structure within a forestry one zone district. That's a town approval process. You get a town approval process for someone that's wanting to put a shipping container on their property that already contains a primary dwelling. This situation would be similar in nature, that you would get a form at the town level for someone requesting a storage shed exemption in a platted subdivision. Yes, I would agree with the other comments that we received, that if the town is going to approve it in a platted subdivision, you're gonna have a tough time denying it for, you know, you approved Ron's to deny John's in a platted subdivision is going to be very difficult. But the town would still, again, have the power where if the town did not want to see storage sheds in a platted subdivision, then deny them at each turn. Again, I don't have a dog in this fight. I was tasked by the town of Bass Lake and then reciprocated and passed by zoning committee to, you know, put this draft together. So I have no love loss one way or the other as to whatever the committee decides.
Okay, Mr. Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Benjamin Kurtzwell again, 16040W West Lane. I would just advise this committee to look at the votes that the town's made and try not to read too much into the rationale behind them. There are 8 no votes and 7 yes votes. To me, that's pretty clear. I would advise you again, just not to nitpick through all the comments to try to determine what these towns were exactly thinking. They voted, and I think we should accept those votes. Again, the town of Hayward voted unanimously to not change the ordinance to accept this language. That's where we stand. I personally do not have any skin in this game. I just want you guys to know that the town's made a decision. Please let's not nitpick and try to figure out what their actual rationale was unless they have stated it clearly. Thank you.
All right, anyone else out there want to speak? No more hands up, okay?
Hey, Ron, Steve Binding here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to approach this from a public safety perspective, right? So when we have and I'm just going to give our town example, right? So we're a really forested area, right? So we're in spring and it's wildland area. And when you think about these storage sheds, what's the first thing they're going to put in them? A lawnmower and flammables. So now we're turning a wildland situation into a structure fire situation, and we're going to see volunteer departments getting called out to all kinds of places in the woods that we don't know. I mean, I'll compliment everybody that I do believe there was a portion on this that said they needed a fire number. So that's good, but we're looking at some towns with some pretty strained public safety response resources. And when you start talking about little sheds added to the wildland component, which very likely have flammables or God knows what else in them. So I guess that's just kind of the point that I wanted to make about the public safety. So thanks a lot, Ron. Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thanks, Steve. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, need a motion to come out of public hearing on ordinance amendment to section 426, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Wilson, second by Mr. Schuman to come out of public hearing on zoning ordinance amendment to section 4.26. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. We are now out of public hearing. So I guess the next thing is, do we want to make an action on this to send it to the county board? Or how do you guys want to go about this?
Well, can't we just move it on to the county board?
And let them decide?
Yeah, and give the results. Jay can give the talk and say that 8
No.
deny and 1
No.
or 7 approve. Or do we want to send a recommendation? Go ahead, Kate.
You ultimately would still want to send a recommendation. And maybe legal counsel can weigh in on this. Mr. Neese had made a comment before about the processes that we have done in the past, and he is correct, where when we have done these, these town polls in the past, if we didn't have the majority of approval, it was really something that, this committee would then deny the proposed draft to move forward. When you look at state statutes, that is not what the county has done previously, in that, Mr. Binding alluded to it, where it is actually as a resolution that comes from the town, and you actually need 50% of the towns to submit the resolution for denial of a proposed ordinance amendment. If you have a majority of denial through a town resolution, that is the official statute provisions as to how those ordinances are then denied. Now, again, not a great practice in switching policies that we've done before, but those policies are not statutes. And it's something that we probably want to change eventually as we move forward, where we would probably end up, changing our town opinion forms and be it just as a town opinion poll, and then to include language as far as, to officially reject a proposal. Here's how you submit a resolution for denial. But schematics, again, default to the committee as to what actions you guys want to move.
Well, should we hear from Kylie? See what she says. Okay, you got something you want to say?
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Okay, I guess.
I guess I can't sit through this without stating my point. We have a subdivision in winter. Say you're driving down, and Steve, Mr. Binding would be able to concur with this. You're driving down Golf Course Road, and you've got 8 lots on the, what would be the south side of the road that are subdivision. And they are not allowed to have a storage building completely. And you have lots on the north side of the road that would be able to have a storage building on them. How are we being fair to the people that bought this lot as compared with the people that bought the lot on the opposite side of the road? I guess I'm having a hard time with this. In fairness to the constituents of the town of Winter.
He's absolutely correct.
I mean, I'm looking at you, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, you would then, I mean, really, ultimately, because you purchased in a subdivision, you would not be allowed for the storage shed exemption.
And probably when you purchased, you didn't know it was a subdivision. It was a lot. It was placed to buy and possibly build someday, or as a good camping spot. Everybody can have a good time. But you can't have a storage shed. It doesn't seem right to me.
Okay. Yeah, well.
It's a quandary.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the change to the ordinance.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Wilson, a second by Mr. Schulman to deny the zoning ordinance amendment to section 4.26. Any more discussion? Roll call, Kathy.
Kay Wilson,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Tweed Schuman.
Yes.
John Saralski.
No.
Marshall Savitsky,
No.
3-2.
Carly, can I get a little help from you here?
Yeah, could you guys not hear me before? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, I was trying to talk earlier when you guys were asking for me, and I don't know if it's because I took my AirPods out. So what are you asking right now? I just barely put them back in, and it cut out for a second.
Sure. So the zoning committee has made a recommendation for denial for a proposed zoning ordinance amendment. We had, again, in essence, polled the towns for their decision on this, and there were a majority of denial. What happens now at this point? Does it still move on to county board as a recommendation for denial, and then the state statute provisions as far as towns needing to submit resolutions, and there's a time process. There's a time process from a public hearing, and then there's a time process if county board was to ratify the ordinance. I guess, what do you think is the process that should proceed? Because I want to make sure that I'm doing things correctly.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys did it this way. We did need to make a recommendation one way or the other. It's my understanding and that it will go to the county board for that statutory process now.
Okay.
Is that what you were talking about? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so it still moves to county board. It comes to the recommendation from denial.
Yeah.
I would reiterate to the county board that when we pulled the town's decisions, that there were a majority in denial.
Correct.
And then also, I guess, reiterate at that, those specific languages of statutes that if for some reason county board still approve the ordinance amendment, that towns would really need to be tasked to submit a resolution within the time frame. And if there's a majority of denial at that time, that would in effect, not allow the ordinance to be ratified.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right.
Moving on to new business, the ordinance amendment for multi-dwelling development. Those that are new to the committee, welcome to the show. Ordinance amendment for multi-dwelling development has been in discussion for over 2 years. In fact, was also brought up as a portion of the ordinance amendment going back to 2021. We've had a lot of discussion on this. The towns are still, the majority of them, when we poll the towns, are in denial of the kind of changes that we've been looking at doing. When I had talked with the town association meeting, when was that? Is that the beginning of the month or was that the end of April? I think it was the end of April. I can't remember the dates anymore. But at that time, there's still quite a bit of confusion and there's still a difference of opinions because there's multiple elements within this multi-dwelling development portion where some people are in favor of this one, but not in favor of this aspect, favor in this one, not in favor of that one. And there's so many different opinions, when you try to poll for, in essence, 15 different towns. So what I suggested at that point is to come out with an additional summary or additional survey to the towns as to, which route we want to go. Zoning department is absolutely swamped right now with the number of permits and applicants we have coming in for land use permits. I have not had a chance to sit down and kind of craft out this survey letter, so I have nothing to share with you as to what this survey would entail. But I kind of know where those specific elements of, confusion or difference of opinion lie. And I want to specifically target those as my survey questions to the towns so we can get some type of rationale as to how we craft this. So that's my next step. Within the next week, I'm going to be generating that survey. I can certainly send it out to you, but there wouldn't be, as an official approval from this committee to send my survey questions on. Now, if this committee has additional survey questions that they would want to add to that, I'm all ears. Otherwise, I was planning on making up this survey, sending it out to towns so that the towns can get it before their June town board meetings and really kind of get me some of that information back. Because right now we're at a stall, we're at a standstill as to how we move forward. There are some changes that need to occur one way or the other. And again, positioning and petitioning the towns as to, well, which you want to go option A, option B, option C. So that's all I have to share. We don't need additional action. I don't think for me to send out a survey to the towns. I'd be acting as a zoning administrator. But again, I would try to send that out to you mid part of next week prior to me sending it out to the towns by the end of next week. Not a lot of turnaround time for you to get me additional survey questions you may think of. And I gotta try to block out some time on my own schedule. I got interviews coming up for a position we gotta rehire, and it's gonna be a little bit of hair pulling out over the next month or two for the zoning department, so.
Jay, why can't we postpone this until July? I mean, it's been out there forever. It gets the towns and then you time to look at it, discuss it, give you what you want. And I don't think that way we would be rushed.
And that's fair, that's entirely
I guess
fine
my
with me.
recommendation would be to bring it back in July's zoning committee meeting.
And I guess the only reason why, and it's not necessarily a time thing. Now, we do have a request that I had taken yesterday, and it's probably something I wanna, hatch out with either with Kylie or Rebecca, but I should certainly almost bring it to this committee, and I guess this would be as item, B. We do have a request for a multi-dwelling development proposal. It's a conditional use permit, and there again, the provisions of this property is located in our R2 zone district, and they're requesting to put 5 dwelling units on one lot. The 5 dwelling units would meet the minimum size requirements for dimensional requirements for each dwelling. It's a 6+ acre plot of land. But when we go back to the definition of dwelling unit per the Sawyer County ordinance, dwelling unit is to be 1 dwelling unit per lot. Where again, that's where the ordinance has always butted heads, where you have provisions to do a conditional use permit to allow for multi-dwelling development. And then we have a definition that says you're only allowed 1 dwelling unit. I do believe there was some unintended consequences with adding that language into that definition. But am I able to legally accept a conditional use permit for this type of use? Everything else checks the box as far as going for a conditional use permit, except the definition of dwelling unit, as the last sentence states, only 1 dwelling unit per lot is allowed. So I don't know how to make that exemption for that definition, yet we have other provisions within the ordinance that allow you to go that route.
It's a rock and a hard place.
Right. So if I'm not able to accept that conditional use permit, I want to know soon so I can tell the applicant we can't process this at this current time. And that is one of the time constraints with the multi-dwelling development. Where I think that's at least the one thing we need to correct is, do you even want to allow multi-dwelling development, period? Or should we eliminate the definition of dwelling unit that would state only 1 dwelling unit is allowed per lot unless otherwise approved by conditional use permit? Because if you want to get rid of multi-dwelling all development, that's fine. And if that towns also only want to state 1 dwelling unit per lot, period, that's fine. I just need to craft ordinances. Because then at that point, I would have never taken this application. I would have said, nope, not in Sawyer County. Can't have more than 1 dwelling unit on 1 lot. They can't split this lot. This is actually an island lot development that they're looking at doing this on.
I don't want to eliminate multi-dwelling development because I think that's important for our housing shortage. I think we need triplexes and fourplexes and.
Right, because I don't know who's involved or has looked at what the hospital is looking at doing for their kind of, dwelling development that they're doing on the corner of Hospital Road and 77. They're proposing, I forget, is it 20 pods of duplexes? It's somewhere around that number. I saw a map the other day, and they're going to have those dwellings for those, working at the hospital. So they're gonna put up basically 20 different duplexes on that 1 lot. Now that got annexed into the city, and the city obviously has different provisions than the county zoning does. But if Town of Hayward wanted to see something similar like that for affordable housing options, I don't see the way that you can do it unless you change that sentence of dwelling unit to state only 1 dwelling unit is allowed per lot unless otherwise approved by the conditional use permit. Yeah. Then you'd still have conditions that you could implement. You could still deny them if you found substantial evidence to deny it. So I'm kind of, again, in a rock and a hard place for timing aspects. I appreciate let's, hold off a little bit on sending out the survey and that's fine. I can certainly do that. But we do need to make a decision one way or the other eventually.
I guess what I'm looking at is make sure that the towns, you can send it out in June, but that gives them time to look at it, act on it, and we don't have to act on it until July. But the towns are gonna have enough time to look at it and say, this is what this is, but I don't know what the rest of the committee wants. That's just my opinion. You want it to come back in June or should we postpone it until July and give the towns and everybody else a chance to look at this when he gets time to get it done? I guess to me, it's just, I think it should be postponed until July before the committee sees it again. So.
Yeah, I guess I'll circle back with Rebecca to see if there's a way we can hear the conditional use permit, which would be subject to be heard in July as a multi-dwelling conditional use permit. Because again, there are provisions within the zone district requirements that allow for multi-dwelling development as a use authorized by conditional use permit. And then just state that the definition of dwelling unit does not apply for the one dwelling unit per lot because you're applying for a conditional use permit. I think the intent of why that language was added there, and I believe it was me that actually added that in there, is when we were looking at the temporary guest quarters, where the temporary guest quarters, which is the overflow sleeping area within a garage that was done in 2020 or 2022. I think that was the 2020. Where these temporary guest quarters were not going to be classified as a dwelling unit because a dwelling unit would have something that has a kitchen facility in it. Something that you would be able to not only, sleep in, but cook in and use the quote unquote facilities. So we specifically said that a temporary guest quarters cannot contain a kitchen. Therefore, we're not classifying it as a dwelling unit. But we had a lot of other individuals at that time that were wanting to do, well, can I put a guest house on my property, a second cabin on my property? We said, no, that's where you only allowed one dwelling unit per lot. But by adding that language, there was an unintended consequence that got in there. That is why we're in this rock and a hard place. So again, I'm going to circle back with legal to see if there's a way to hear this conditional use permit for multi-dwelling development. It's, again, meets all other requirements. It's for 3 or more dwelling units, because there was always the issue of 1 you're allowed, 3 or more you're allowed, but there was no avenue for 2. So we're not talking about that aspect. And it's really what they're planning this as, without divulging it too much at this point, is almost kind of as a resort for foster kids. It's in your town, by the way. It's on Callahan, on the island. And they'd also need a variance then too. So it's a 2-step process. They need a variance for more than, yeah, it'll be an interesting one for sure. But I don't necessarily want to just deny them the opportunity to apply. I'd like to have them to at least have their day.
Yeah, I understand that.
Boards and committees.
Right.
So
you don't, Mr. Chairman, you don't need a motion then to postpone until July, just give Jay the.
No, we're not, it's not a public hearing. So this is just discussion and possible action item for the zoning.
I think what I would almost recommend is that you would make a motion that you would want to see the survey list in June. Not that it's sent out to the towns, but you guys would get to look at the survey list to see what I'm trying to propose as these survey questions. And then during that June meeting, we can have additional discussion to see if there's other questions.
Yeah, sure.
And then at that point, after we make that approval of the survey list, then we would send out to July for the towns.
Okay, yep.
I make a motion to have Jay provide the survey list to the zoning committee in June.
Perfect.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. to, what was that?
Send, provide survey list to committee. and-
Yes, provide survey list to the committee. Any more discussion?
Prior to
Just like
sending
to
it
say
down.
that would probably build a foundation in June or July. is what you're saying.
Yeah, so,
Yes.
so this committee would be able to see the survey list, the general public would be able to see the survey list, and if there's additional survey questions that should be asked to the towns at that point, we can fix that, and then that goes out in July.
Because Jay and been putting a lot of work into this. It's been on the books forever. And myself, and I'm sure the zoning committee too, would like to get this out of the way. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Okay, number B, any other business that may come before the committee? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.